Hey, everybody. Glad to be here with all of you. Glad to be back. Let's have another late night chat, shall we?
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad to be back. I've been doing a lot. This has been a really busy month for me, but I'm back. I will tell you all about it in a little bit. We obviously have a lot of world events to respond to. But yeah, for those of you who may not be familiar, the way these streams happen is first I give my opening remarks. Then from there, we do a roll call. And then I answer your questions for the remainder of the show. The way that we can receive questions is via Rumble Rants on Rumble, or you can send me questions on Cash App to Caleb Maupin 22. Now, unfortunately, we're not getting super chats here on YouTube. I don't know why. They won't let me remonetize. I should be able to apply for remonetization, but never had a strike, but I had one warning. They didn't like a video I made, and I'd like to monetize this channel again. But if you got a question, Cash App me, Caleb Maupin 22. Include your question. If you don't have enough room, I'll let you follow up the rest of the question in the chat. Or you can Rumble rant me on the Rumble. Rumble has no problem with me doing these streams. So there we go. We do obviously have some very important announcements. Namely, the biggest announcement is coming up. July 12th is the big day. The Center for Political Innovation is having our national convention in Chicago. And I was just in Chicago. Shout out to everyone there. You'll be seeing some video later of people are working hard to make that big day a success. We need you there. We need you to come to Chicago for the big day. We have our team that's coming in from out of town, our members that are signed up for the 7-day program, but we need you to just be there. And at the moment, it looks like we're going to have quite an exciting group of people speaking. It appears that Scott Ritter, the great Scott Ritter, is going to be there. It appears that Angela McCurdle of the Libertarian Party is going to be there. It appears that Sayed Husseini, an important Iranian American, is going to be there. It appeers that, a number of people are coming out. The great speakers. Keith Preston from attackthesystem.org is going to be there. Wow, if I just start naming everybody, I'm going to not name some people. There's going to be a dance performance, a dance team from the former Soviet Union is going to be there. Brian, our musician, our folk singer, is going to be performing throughout the day. My goodness. Wow, if I start naming people now, David Fox and Jeff Young, the Kentucky Party founder, and David Fox, the Australian labor unionist. And oh man, it's just like so many great people. So just come, just be there. That's what I want from you. If you're somebody who watches this channel, I want you there. I want you in the audience. I want you to shake hands with the speakers, drink some coffee, get a selfie with our speakers before the event starts, hang out, get to know everybody. But I know all of you are not able to make it. So from those of you who aren't able to make it, there's one thing you can do for me. And that is send us a donation because, it's adding up. I'll just tell you, I was on the phone with the hotel and it looks like whenever you do one of these things, it ends up costing way more than you can predict. So send us a donation. That would really, really help. If you could just give us a GoFundMe donation, that would make our lives easier. But yeah, and thanks to the people who have stepped up. There have been some people who have stepped up and really helped us out. Many, many thanks. I don't know if I should say names on here. If I should, that would be a violation of privacy. Maybe people don't want to know that they contributed, but some people have really contributed, and that is really appreciated. But we got to stay ahead of it. So donate to the event. All right. Now, as I said, the way the show goes, first opening remarks, followed by the roll call. And then I answer your questions. I'm accepting questions on Rumble and on Cash App. So send in questions for the second half of the show. I'm looking forward to hearing what people want me to talk about, answering people's questions. Obviously, there's a lot going on. Send in your questions for the second half of the show, and we'll just get down to it. Well, I've been traveling, as you all know. Where have I been? Well, I was overseas, spoke at the Global Digital Forum in Russia, came back to the United States, went to the Los Angeles to cover the riots, some wild riot footage, if you saw that. Then I went home for a few days. Then I went to Chicago. Noah, my good comrade from Boston, he drove out to Chicago with a bunch of equipment for the convention. Now I'm back in New York City, and I'll be here for a little bit until it's time to head back to Chicago for the convention. It is summertime, finally, in New York City. I mean, I don't know. It was cold and it was cold and it was cold. And in May, it seemed like it was in early June. It still seemed like it was cold, but finally it is now summertime, the end of June. It is summer in New York City, and I am loving it. Summer, I do love, obviously air conditioner is a necessity, but walking outside in the heat, looking over the ocean here in Brooklyn, having a nice dinner with my lovely wife. We've been married for 11 years, and it's been good. It's been good, and I'm glad to be home and get some rest. I'm taking care of a lot of different tasks for the convention, and I'm really, really happy about it. I've been also streaming. Part of the reason I haven't been streaming as much is that I've been going on Press TV. I've been, doing my journalism, but also the Islamic Republic of Iran, their English language TV network, needs guests. And as an American, as someone who's been to Iran and sympathizes with the Iranian people strongly against U.S. imperialism, I feel like if they call me up and say, hey, Caleb, we need you to come on for an hour tonight to talk about current events, give the American perspective on these events, the real American perspective, I'm not going to say no to them. So tonight, before I came on here, I was on Press TV for an hour, and it's the London studio. The London studio of Press TV was broadcasting, and all over Iran, millions of people saw me and the woman who was the other guest, Sakina. We were interviewed. We did like an hour set. I did that I did that on Sunday night as well, and I've done 3-hour sets on Press TV, and it's really an honor that at a time that my country is bombing Iran, the United States government is bombing Iran, and Israel is attacking Iran, that I'm an American that they trust to get on TV and tell the real story, right? I mean, think about it, right? How many Americans would be trusted in Iran right now? But I'm trusted enough to go on the air with them and speak to, an audience of millions of Iranians for an hour, right? Anyone who speaks English in Iran, which is quite a few people, quite a few Iranians speak English. It's broadcast. It's on TV all over the country. They got Press TV, and I'm on there giving my perspective. And I'm deeply honored and humbled that God chose me for this role. I have an important role to play to be a voice, to show the other side of America, to show there are people here that are anti-imperialist. And it's very humbling for me to go on Iranian TV amid this whole crisis. And so, I'm not going to say no. I'm certainly not going to say no. And, I was reporting from the streets of Chicago, reporting from the streets of Los Angeles. I was overseas at conferences. Now I'm back in the United States, and I've been doing some Press TV appearances. So here we are. So the latest is that apparently this ceasefire is in effect. Iran has opened up its airspace. Israel has opened up its airspace. And they're now calling it the 12-day war. And that's what it's going to be called, the 12-day war. When Israel did their sneak attack on Iran, murdered top Iranian generals and nuclear scientists. And then Iran retaliated against Israel with very dramatic force, brought down skyscrapers, destroyed government buildings, had all of Israel hiding in bunkers, just, issued a retaliation against Israel that country has never seen before. Right? The only thing that ever came close was when Saddam Hussein was shooting missiles at Israel in the early 90s, right? He did that, but that was nothing compared to what Iran did. I mean, Iran just really punished Israel for their sneak attack, and Israel kept bombing Iran, and the two countries were exchanging missiles. And then Donald Trump on Saturday, June 22nd, Donald Trump attacked Iran's nuclear facilities. And Donald Trump beat his chest and said, oh, this was the most epic attack, and we completely obliterated Iran. And, I was in Chicago. Shout out to the people I was with. We heard about it first from Trump. Usually when the USA bombs a country, that country speaks up and says, wow, we're being bombed. This time we didn't even know, no one even knew the attack happened until Donald Trump was on Twitter bragging about it. And Iran, after Donald Trump announced the attack, Iran looked into it and they said, yeah, this attack kind of didn't do anything. The Fordo nuclear facility, Iran took all the nuclear stuff out of it 3 days before that. And it's under, like miles of concrete. It's like deep under the ground. The only thing that was touched by the attack was the entrance tunnel and the exit tunnel. The facility was not damaged in any way. And this attack had almost no impact. But Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Netanyahu are insisting, oh, no, we got them. We just destroyed Iran's nuclear program. It was obliterated. We got it. I mean, they're saying, oh, they're jumping up and down. Iran's like, no, you didn't really get us. And then on top of that, now the New York Times on Sunday came out and said, yeah, based on what we can investigate and determine, it was kind of a minimal, meaningless attack. Now, the Defense Intelligence Agency of Donald Trump's own military brass, the Department of Defense, is saying, yeah, these attacks on Iran did absolutely nothing. But Donald Trump is sticking with his story, and he's tweeting out, no, we got him. It was obliterating. And J.D. Vance, the vice president, is backing up Trump. And it's looking pretty weird. Fox News, which generally sides with Trump, is saying, yeah, these attacks did absolutely nothing. So Netanyahu and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have one story. The rest of the planet is like, these attacks did absolutely nothing. Now, in response, Iran was attacked. They blew up a U.S. military base in Qatar, and they did the honorable thing, which is they let the United States know, you attacked our military facilities. You have a military base in Qatar. We're going to blow it up. And they gave the U.S. government notice, and all the troops were evacuated from the base. And then Iran hit the base with missiles and blew up the U.S. military base. And Iran said, all right, we'll call it even. You kind of attacked our nuclear facilities and did almost nothing. And then we blew up your military base in Qatar. And this, I guess, and they had big celebrations all throughout Iran where they were marching with the flag and with the face of the supreme leader. And they said, we did it. And then Donald Trump announced a ceasefire. And he said that Israel and Iran had agreed to a ceasefire. And then Donald Trump was angry that Israel was not abiding by the ceasefire. And he gave some rather, heated, colorful words, while he was getting on his helicopter this morning. I don't know if you heard that. He dropped an F-bomb, which is not a normal thing for a president to do. He dropped an F-bomb. And yeah, Gabby, I mean, it's wild. He dropped an F-bomb. And then at that point, after he dropped his F-bomb, Israel did abide by the ceasefire. Iran has abided by it. And it's now over. And they're calling it the 12-day war. Iran's airspace is open. Israel's airspace is open. And it appears that there is peace at the moment. Iran and Israel are not striking each other anymore. The USA has not continued to attack Iran. Iran has not retaliated any further against the United States. And we can all breathe a sigh of relief. And I guess, yeah, right? It's all over. I mean, holy crap. I mean, we almost had World War III. We almost had World War III at this point, right? Iran is aligned with Russia and China, two major nuclear countries. Israel is aligned with the United States. They were killing each other and shooting missiles at each other. And then the USA got involved. Now it's over. We hope. I mean, this is completely and utterly insane. And people are questioning Donald Trump's leadership abilities. I'm certainly disgusted that he would attack Iran when he ran on a platform of starting no new wars. I'm also confused. I'm confused. I think Donald Trump may very well believe that he completely obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, but it appears to me that the people around Donald Trump are not telling him the truth. But then again, this might give Trump an out to end the campaign against Iran, because you can't, Iran can't be a threat anymore, right? I mean, their whole narrative for attacking Iran is Iran's trying to get a nuclear bomb. Well, if Trump insists he completely obliterated their nuclear program, they can't be getting a nuclear bomb. Iran is not trying to get a nuclear bomb. And that's like, I hate to repeat myself. I feel like a broken record, but then again, you never hear this on American media. Iran has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So every nuclear site in Iran is monitored 24 hours a day by video, right? 24 hours a day. Every nuclear site that they use for their nuclear power plants, their peaceful nuclear energy program, is monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. And not once have they ever been found to be in violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Then, if that wasn't enough, in 2015, Iran negotiated the P5+1 talks in Geneva with Barack Obama and the NATO countries. And Iran agreed to give up almost all of their nuclear power. And they took apart almost all of their nuclear power plants for the United States. And in exchange, the United States admitted in writing that Iran does have the right to have peaceful nuclear energy. That as a country, they have the right to nuclear power plants, as long as they're not weaponized. And Iran gave up almost all their nuclear facilities at that time. And in response to that, Donald Trump came into office and pulled out of the deal. And new sanctions were put on Iran. And then, to top it all off, Qasem Soleimani, their national hero, their national military hero, was murdered. And at that point, Iran is like, okay, I guess, we're going to start enriching uranium again, because we gave up our peaceful nuclear energy program for the most part. And then you stabbed us in the back, and Iran began developing peaceful nuclear energy, as they had a right to do. And here we are. But at no point has Iran done anything that violates the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So this whole crisis is based on a fiction. It's based on the idea that Iran enriching uranium for its power plants could maybe possibly eventually they would enrich uranium and then say, actually, we're pulling out, and then they would pull out of the treaty like North Korea did and do that, which they have not done, right? And that's what the whole thing is. Israel has been beating the drum since the 80s that Iran is trying to get a nuclear bomb, and so that justifies all kinds of attacks on Iran. Now, there's another angle of this, which is that the U.S. strategy in the Middle East under Barack Obama during the Arab Spring and even under Trump's first term was to try and polarize the Muslims of the world against Iran, right? To play up the idea that Iran is they're Shia apostates. That's the term that they used. And that Iran, they're not real Muslims because they're Shia. And so therefore, the United States, therefore the Arab countries should fight against them for not being real Muslims. And the USA backed an insurgency and eventually, was successful in toppling the Syrian government because the Syrian government was aligned with Iran. And that was the strategy, was divide the Muslims of the world. That strategy has flopped because since October 7th, all Muslims have been outraged by what Israel has been doing. Israel's bombing Gaza, killing Palestinians around the clock, and Iran is fighting Israel. And it's Iran's allies, like the Houthis, like, the Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're the ones that are actually fighting Israel. And because of that, because Iran is fighting Israel, and it's Iran's allies that are fighting Israel, and are the main people blocking ships in the Red Sea, because Iran is fighting Israel, even if these Arab governments, these various sheikhs and sultanates and kings, monarchs, even if they are corrupt and tied in with the United States, they have to at least praise Iran, because everybody can see that the main enemy of Israel is Iran. Iran's fighting Israel in a way that no other country is. So no Muslim government can hate on Iran right now. They all have to at least pretend they like Iran. Now, I've heard mixed things. People claim that the Pakistani government is not really supporting Iran. It's very interesting. So India hates Pakistan, and people that are close to India are insisting that Pakistan is in bed with Iran. And Pakistan has made statements to the effect that they might use their nuclear arsenal to protect Iran. If Israel were to nuke Iran, they would nuke Israel back, etc. But then I have heard Muslims say that that's not sincere, and that the Pakistani government is just mouthing it. They don't really support Iran. I've heard mixed things, right? But every government, whether they mean it or not, every Muslim government in the world has to at least act like they love Iran right now. So the strategy of dividing the Muslim countries and weakening Iran's support. Iran has never had more support than it does now. Iran is getting support, from everywhere. Everyone who opposes what Israel is doing is supporting Iran, because Iran is the main opponent of it. So Iran is not isolated right now. And you'll notice that the NATO countries that seem to be all on board with the USA against Russia are not on board with Trump and Netanyahu's latest actions. France, Macron has been quite critical of Trump's move. And we're in a weird situation. Now, let's hope that we get peace for a little bit, at least. I mean, but do people realize how dangerous this is? Like, we were on the brink of World War III. We were on the brink of World War III. And this was a really dangerous. This was like a close call. This was a near miss of World War III. And it keeps getting closer to the line, right? There was Syria. There were some moments where it looked like Russia and the USA might go to war over Syria. But this was an all-out war between one country aligned with the United States and another country aligned with Russia and China. And this is very dangerous. Very dangerous. And that brings me to a point that needs to be made here, which I think everyone watching this agrees, at least to some degree or other. Maybe you don't agree with the next part, but what we need in America right now is an anti-war movement. Urgently. Okay. And I want to just be clear about a couple things, right? I don't want to spend too much time on this, right? But I've been getting a barrage of messages saying, Caleb, you endorsed Trump, you promoted Trump, and now Trump is attacking Iran. This is all your fault, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. Trump campaigned on a platform that he was going to end wars. He was going to sign a peace deal and end the war in Ukraine. He hasn't done that. That he was going to de-escalate. He was going to restart talks with North Korea. His platform was a peace platform. It wasn't sincere, but the fact that the American people voted for him on that basis was good. And it was absolutely correct for the Center for Political Innovation to boost that aspect of his campaign. We had the right strategy, and it remains the right strategy. And yes, Trump has betrayed what he campaigned on, just like every Democrat ever. Obama was going to end the wars. Did he do that? Bill Clinton was going to end the wars. Did he do that? Lyndon Johnson said he wouldn't escalate the Vietnam War, and he did. It's like, okay, so now a Republican president betrayed their promise to peace. Are you shocked? Right? Our strategy of boosting the peace message within the MAGA camp was correct. And let me add, only MAGA is really against this, even though Trump himself has betrayed the peace message on the campaign trail. Marjorie Taylor Greene has screamed against this war, has condemned Israel, has pointed out, has basically put on Twitter that JFK was killed for opposing Israel's nuclear weapons program. Marjorie Taylor Greene is MAGA. She was coming out swinging against this war. Candace Taylor, who's my friend, who's been on this channel running for Congress in Georgia, she said, I'm not down with going to war. She has been against this war, right? Thomas Massey, who's a libertarian Republican from the great state of Kentucky, he has been against this war. And the so-called left was not against this war until it already started. And finally, like at the last minute, Bernie Sanders came out, and his tweet was disgusting. He said, if Israel wants to attack Iran, they can do it, but I think that America should stay out. That was his statement. He couldn't even say Israel attacking Iran was wrong, right? He didn't even have the courage to say that Israel doing it, but I think America should stay out. And then AOC started talking against the war. Ilhan Omar is using it to fundraise. They were late to the party. They were absolutely late to the party. The main anti-war voice came from the MAGA side, and the main section of the U.S. public that opposes the war in terms of public opinion was the MAGA side. Now, there are plenty of people, in the left camp that oppose bombing Iran. That's true. But MAGA, it's almost, outside of elected Republicans and outside of like the evangelical folks, Nikki Haley, outside of the people that are tied in with like crazy pro-Israel churches that are just completely under Israel's domination, MAGA is full of people like Tucker Carlson, who humiliated Ted Cruz and came out against this. It's full of people like Candace Owens. The MAGA side, there's a lot more opposition, and the opposition from the so-called left has been weak as hell. So our strategy of boosting the peace MAGA was correct, and it remains correct. And reaching out to folks that are in the MAGA camp or the libertarian camp and trying to build a coalition that includes leftists as well as libertarians and Republicans against the war, that is the correct strategy, and it remains the correct strategy. Doesn't mean that Donald Trump is good. Doesn't mean Donald Trump's, was honest. No, Donald Trump didn't live up to his rhetoric. But wanting to boost the peace MAGA, which is what we did during the election, that was the correct strategy. What we need urgently is a stronger anti-war movement. No politician is going to save us, right? And I have always been clear about that. It's about the balance of forces. It's not about good guys versus bad guys. It's about the balance of forces. And part of the reason that Donald Trump did what he did was because while there's massive public opinion against the war, there's not a mass movement. There is not a mass movement against this war. There should be. And now I'm going to say something that needs to be said. And I will say it here. And I said it on Jamarl Thomas' podcast this morning. And I will say it here again. And I just have to say it because, look, no one else is going to say this, right? There's kind of a gentleman's agreement that we don't go here. I have to go here. I will tell you why there is not the mass movement to represent public opinion in this country that there should be right now. The public is overwhelmingly opposed to this war, but the anti-war protests compared to the Iraq war, the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, compared to the Vietnam War have been very small. Why is it that the U.S. public, including a lot of people within the U.S. military itself, are against this war, but there's not a huge protest movement against it? Well, folks, I will tell you why. Get mad at me, get offended, say, Caleb, don't go there. I'm going to tell you why. The reason that there is not a mass anti-war movement right now is because of 3 letters. PSL. PSL. The Party for Socialism and Liberation. All right? And you can say, Caleb, that's outrageous. You're blaming some tiny socialist group. Yes, I am. For years, the anti-war movement has been controlled by a grifter, a con man, a flim-flam artist named Brian Becker. Brian Becker used to be in the same political group that I used to be in, the Workers' World Party. And then during the Iraq War, he realized how much money he could make off anti-war protests. So he broke away and he started his own political party called the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And what they do is they reserve permits. They've got a law firm. Brian Becker's wife is a lawyer. They've got a law firm, and they file court papers, and they reserve the permits, and they run the anti-war protests. And the reason that they are blocking a real anti-war movement from taking place, the reason that they are doing that is because PSL says that the only people that are allowed to attend and be part of their protests are woke people. If you are against abortion, you are not welcome at PSL rallies. If you are not pro-transgender, you're not welcome. You can't even wave an American flag at a PSL rally. They say American flags are racist. They are woke scum, if there ever were woke scum. They are absolute woke scum. Look, people can have their political views, but as far as PSL is concerned, if you don't have Trump derangement syndrome, if you are not, beginning your speech by announcing your pronouns, you can't be part of their rallies. And, they reserve the permits, they dominate the anti-war spaces, and they will only allow the very small percentage of people that are anti-war and woke to be represented. The millions of American Christians who are against this war can't go to the anti-war protests because Brian's got the permits. The overwhelming majority, the millions of Republicans, Trump supporters that are against this war, they can't go to the protests because Brian's got the permits. The libertarians, right, that are very anti-war, and they've got a member of Congress, Thomas Massie, they can't go to the anti-war protests because Brian controls the permits. This is criminal. It's absolutely criminal. And, it doesn't even make any logical sense unless you do the homework, right? Brian Becker admitted to the New York Times during the final years of Bush's administration that he doesn't actually want to stop the wars. He actually said that to the New York Times. I mean, it's like a moment of mask off honesty. The New York Times quoted Brian Becker saying, I don't actually want to stop the wars. It's about radicalizing people, meaning he's trying to recruit people to his little tiny socialist group. He doesn't really care if the war stops. That is a quote. He said, it's not about actually stopping the war. It's about radicalizing people. Unbelievable. This grifter, this con man, this scam artist, Brian Becker, has seized control of the anti-war movement. And he's got a group of, college kids that are pronoun police, that are cancel culture, 20-year-olds who work for him. And they are determined to make sure the anti-war protests stay small and are run by and contain nothing but AOC fans. That's what they're determined to do. And it's really disgusting. And what's interesting to me is I've noticed that I was in Chicago for the anti-war protest that happened. And in Chicago, it's pretty wild, right? In Chicago, there's a lot of different groups that are against the war. And there are two different rallies. There's the rallies run by Brian Becker, and there's the rallies run by everyone else, right? PSL has made enemies out of every other socialist communist group, right? Even other woke socialists don't agree with PSL, right? PSL is so determined that you will obey us. We get to be the bosses. If you don't do exactly what we say, you don't get to speak at the stage. We're king of the protest cage. They are so determined to keep the anti-war movement small that even the other woke socialists can't stand them. That's how bad they are, right? And right now, we urgently need an anti-war movement. One of the people that we're going to honor at our upcoming CPI conference is Angela McCurdle. Why are we going to honor Angela McCurdle? Because she, as chair of the Libertarian Party, organized an anti-war protest in Washington, D.C. that was multi-view perspective. It had people from the Republican Party, like Tulsi Gabbard, like Judge Napolitano. It had people from the Democratic Party, like Dennis Kucinich. It had leftists, like Chris Hedges. It had all kinds of different people speak at it. And Angela organized that rally. And what did PSL do? Did they say, well, we organize the rallies sometimes, but, let Angela have a go? Oh, no. PSL launched an internet smear campaign, and they didn't just say this rally was bad, and they didn't just say this rally was wrong. No, they called this rally a Nazi rally. A Nazi rally. Those were the words that they used. A white supremacist gathering. And that was basically PSL calling for, they wanted a mass shooting at that rally. That's basically what they were calling for. They wanted Antifa or one of these leftists to go there and kill everybody, because as far as they're concerned, the only good fascist is a dead one. And they claim that this entire rally was a Nazi rally, right? And, you know, Jason Unruhe, the silly Maoist rebel guy, he made a video calling it a right-wing terrorist rally. And it wasn't just an anti-war rally of people who disagreed with them. Everyone who went to it was a Nazi or a white supremacist. And that was the language they used. Those are fighting words, right? If you look at PSL's history, right, there's a pamphlet called Klan and Government, Foes or Allies by Sam Marcy. As far as they are concerned, if you are a fascist or a white supremacist, violence against you is justified and government repression of you is justified. And that's PSL's position. They basically called for everyone that attended this anti-war rally to be killed. That was basically what they did. They didn't directly say it, but by calling it fascist, calling it white supremacist, calling it Nazi and racist, that's what they were doing. That's how badly they want to block a real anti-war movement from existing. And I don't want to be Mr. Negative and Mr. Sectarian here. But again, I get a lot of people that say, Caleb, why do you have to do CPI? Why don't you just join one of these other groups? Because of stuff like this. PSL is a roadblock to revolution. PSL is a roadblock to a real anti-war movement, right? Brian Becker is trying to make money and maximize his profits and recruit little teenagers to join his protest club, his woke protest club. And he is doing this with the intention of preventing a real anti-war movement. This is dangerous. I'm going to call it out. Another thing that I'm going to warn you all about is we need to be very wary of political violence. Okay. Now, people have the right to defend themselves. The Black Panthers, they defended themselves. They engaged in their Second Amendment right to bear arms, and they patrolled the streets with their arms to protect Black people from police brutality. They carried shotguns and law books and tape recorders. That's not terrorism. That's self-defense, right? And labor unions, many times in West Virginia, coal miners would bring guns to the picket line to fight off the company thugs. That's self-defense. And, our Constitution in the United States says you have a right to have a gun. And that's not just to go hunting. It's to protect yourself. So I am not opposed to self-defense, right? You have the right. I live in New York City, where I guess we don't have that right. So I don't have a gun. But if I didn't live in New York City, I would probably have a firearm, which would be my constitutional right. I have no problem with people engaging in self-defense. I have no problem with that. However, murder is not a political strategy that I endorse. And there was a mass movement for Medicare for all. And that movement was smeared. And Jimmy Dore called for forcing the vote, a parliamentary procedure to demand Medicare for all during the pandemic. And that was smeared. But now the very same forces that smeared the Medicare for all marches and smeared the Jimmy Dore force the vote movement, out of nowhere, those forces have now, at this point, they have decided to glorify the alleged crime of Luigi Mangione. And this is very dangerous. And then we saw, on the same day as the No Kings rally on Donald Trump's birthday, a political murder take place in Minnesota. And that I am convinced there is a strategy for containing dissent modeled on the years of lead in Italy. And that left adventurism and terrorism must be opposed. We don't need violence. It's hard enough to get people to come to rallies and demonstrations right now because of all the internet mudslinging and this culture of I'll just stay home and watch the Zoom. It's very hard to get people to come out and be part of a real political movement right now. But imagine people were afraid of getting shot and killed, right? It would be a lot harder. That's how it was in Italy in the 1970s and 80s. And that's what celebrating the alleged crime of Luigi Mangione will lead to. It will lead to that. And we've got to oppose political violence. We need to call out PSL for their sabotaging of the pro-Palestine movement by keeping it woke and keeping average Americans out, and their sabotaging of the anti-war movement, demanding no war with Iran by keeping conservatives and keeping non-woke people out. We need to call them out. On top of that, we need to make a strong case about why political violence, not self-defense, but political violence, terrorism, left adventurism, assassinations, that stuff has to be denounced. It is wrong to do it. It's certainly not going to advance any kind of revolution. It leads to, government repression. It leads to people being afraid. It leads to all kinds of bad things. But on top of that, it's not just wrong to do it. It is wrong to glorify it. If you tweet in support of Luigi Mangione, if you celebrate, the assassination of some government official you don't agree with, you are hurting the movement we need. You are leading people off a cliff, right? A culture of political violence in America. If that emerges, we're not going to get a government of action that fights for working families. We're going to get deterioration and polarization. All right. So I've made my case there. And I think that needs to be said. And that while, we're going to keep doing what we do and getting our message out there, we need to, escalate our criticism of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, because the way that they are conducting themselves is really hurting world peace. They're putting the world in danger with their actions, and they need to be called out. And maybe it seems niche and obscure, but that's the case. Now, I do want to say this. Right? I will throw this out there. The PSL was apparently subpoenaed by Republicans in Congress who are investigating their role in the political violence in Los Angeles. Right? There was some adventurous political violence in LA. I don't know exactly what PSL is accused of or whatever, but there's Congress has asked PSL members to come and testify. And in the coming months, some PSL members are going to be dragged in front of Congress. And we oppose that. I'm against that as a matter of principle. I do think PSL glorifies political violence in a deeply unhealthy way. If they would just come out and apologize and say, no, the Center for Political Innovation are not neo-Nazis. No, we don't celebrate what Luigi Mangione is doing. No, the Rage Against the War Machine rally was not a Nazi rally. It was people who just disagree with us or against war. If they would just do that, it'd be fine. They won't do that because that would offend the woke 20-year-olds they're pandering to. But, we have a beef with PSL, but we still don't support government repression against them, right? And, I have a feeling that these congressional hearings are going to be stupid as hell because PSL, they're going to try to say that, PSL is a communist group aligned with China and, these protests against Trump, they were involved. So therefore all the Democrats are communist Chinese. It's going to be stupid. I almost said it was going to be retarded. That's not politically correct, but it's going to be really dumb. Right. It's going to be some, MAGA. It's going to be the dumb side of MAGA that we're going to hear about, woke people and communists are the same thing. No, they are not. Right. No, that drives me crazy. Sometimes when I hear these MAGA people talk, I just want to shake them. It's like, you really think these pink-haired pronoun kids and North Korea are the same? You really believe that? And they do. And they oh, yeah, it's the same. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. But that's part of the MAGA propaganda is that, part of the dumber side of MAGA is that woke people and China and North Korea and Stalin's Russia are somehow the same, which they are not. And so they're going to try to use these hearings as grandstanding before Congress to make that case. And it's going to be dumb. And it's going to result in PSL getting a huge amount of sympathy on MSNBC. And it's going to result in a lot of MAGA people being confused. And it's going to, the effort, this is the negative side of MAGA. They're trying to recruit MAGA people to support wars against North Korea or against China. And so they want them to think that the woke people they hate are the same. And PSL represents a really, really, really small minority within wokeism that does actually support North Korea, that does actually support China. So they're trying to shine a spotlight on them to incite MAGA people to support wars against these countries. And on top of that, they're violating their civil liberties. They're violating their right to privacy, trying to make them turn over their emails, etc. That's wrong, and we will oppose that. We will oppose PSL being subpoenaed. They shouldn't be. And we don't want a culture. Look, we remember the 1950s where they dragged all the Communist Party leaders before Congress and tried to make them name names, etc. We can't have that back. So even though we're calling out PSL for their wokening and weakening of the anti-war movement, even though we are vehemently angry with PSL because they advocate violence against us, even though we know for a fact that PSL would never defend us if the government came for us, that they tried to sabotage the Uhuru movement in their defense. That's a whole nother story, but we were there for the Uhuru movement. PSL tried to get their rally canceled and maneuvered against Chairman O'Malley and the Uhuru movement. Doesn't matter, right? We don't support PSL being dragged before a congressional committee. Look, there's somebody who was in our circles for a little while and then became a vehement enemy of the Center for Political Innovation and basically was supporting people that were smearing us, made up lies. He sent unprincipled people to our events. There's somebody who's really not a friend of ours who was also, he recently had the FBI come to his house and take his equipment. And that young man is named Alex Dillard, right? And the Committee for FBI Repression just put out a statement that he had his equipment taken. He had his home, a search warrant executed on him. Well, we oppose that too, even though Alex Dillard has been pretty nasty to us and, repeated smears and lies against the Center for Political Innovation and tried to justify a lot of the harassment that we faced. Even though Alex Dillard has been unprincipled in the past, we don't support the FBI going after him, right? So, we oppose repression of activists, right? If they come for some anti-imperialist, if they violate somebody's civil liberties, we're going to oppose it because we have principles. We're not like them, right? PSL does not have principles. Alex Dillard does not have principles. We do. And so we oppose the government going against them. And we would protest in the streets in favor of PSL. We would protest in the streets in favor of Alex Dillard. We would do that as a matter of principle. We have principles. When the government comes after somebody, it is your responsibility to support them. An injury to one is an injury to all. Right? And this is a basic thing that these young people on the internet, I want to slap them sometimes. I don't, because I don't believe in corporal punishment, but it infuriates me. Right, that these young people, it's like, nowadays, if they wanted to execute Mumia Abu-Jamal, right? When I was first getting involved in political activism, Mumia Abu-Jamal was the main cause we organized around. He was a black activist who was falsely accused of killing a police officer. Nowadays, and all the leftists, communists supported him, the Catholic Church supported him, the vegetarians supported him, all kinds of people marched and they stopped the execution of Mumia Abu-Jamal, 1996. It was a really important moment, I think 95. And he, they tried to institute the death penalty in his case many times and it failed. Nowadays, all they would have to do in order to get, the left to support killing Mumia was accuse him of transphobia. They just have to have ContraPoints or BreadTube make a video about how Mumia is, transphobic. And then most of the leftists would support killing him. There is no understanding that if they come for one of us, they should have to deal with all of us, because the threat to one, an injury to one is an injury to all. And you have to just say no. You have to just say no to government repression. It's that simple. If they can do it to them, they can do it to us. And so we have to oppose it. It's that simple. And it doesn't matter if you disagree with them about this or you disagree with them about that. It doesn't matter. If the government is dragging people before committees, if the government is raiding people's homes and confiscating their electronics, if the government is harming people for their anti-imperialism, if the government is dragging people into court and trying to sentence them to years in jail for being foreign agents, it must be opposed. And that is not a point of negotiation, and it doesn't matter. And all other issues don't matter. You have to lock shoulders against government repression. You have to. You have to. And that's just how it is. And that is a principle that I will stick to and I will fight for, no matter how much the party at hand has offended me. I will be consistent in my principles. So if this ends up happening, I mean, I guess they've already got their subpoena, and if they end up, going after PSL, we will loudly oppose it. We will loudly oppose it, and we oppose the repression of all. We oppose the repression of dissent. We call for a blanket amnesty for all the January 6th inmates. Now, I think Trump has freed many of them, but I think there are still some January 6th inmates that are locked up. They should all be freed, not because we don't think that they broke the law. Some of them very clearly did, but because there was so much FBI involvement in making that day happen. There were so many lies told in the aftermath of that to create an atmosphere where they couldn't get a fair trial. As a matter of principle, they need to release all the January 6th inmates. Now, I don't know how many of them there are left. Maybe if someone can fact check that and find out how many of them are left, we want them all free. And we want all the Black Liberation Army fighters to be released. Leonard Peltier, he's been released from federal prison, but he's under like house arrest. He should be released, right? And again, is that because we think it's okay what the Black Liberation Army did? Their terror, left adventurous terrorism? No. It's because the FBI killed all kinds of Black freedom fighters. And the FBI engaged in all kinds of stuff. And no FBI agents went to jail. And so, as a matter of healing and as a matter of, fairness, they need to release the veterans of the 1960s upsurge, right? I think there are still some Weather Underground people in jail. I know David Gilbert was in prison here in New York for many years, but Andrew Cuomo released him from prison as he was leaving office as governor. But we want them all freed, right? In Northern Ireland, when the Good Friday Agreement was signed, part of the Good Friday Agreement was that all the IRA fighters were released. All the IRA fighters who were locked up were released. That was part of the agreement to heal society. And if the U.S. government really wants to have peace with Black America, they need to free all the political prisoners, all the Black Panthers, all the Black Liberation Army people. They all need to be released. On top of that, if the U.S. government really wants to bring the country together and get over the January 6th Capitol riot, all the January 6ers need to be released. Look, people being in prison is not good. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Rapists, child molesters, axe murderers, obviously, prisons have to exist at this time. It'd be nice to eventually get to a society down the road where they didn't exist. But honestly, incarceration should be rare. It is an awful thing. If anyone has ever had someone in their family go to prison, it's an awful, traumatizing experience. That person comes out of jail, they're not the same person that they once were. Being locked up in a prison is a very, very horrible experience that no one should go through unless it's absolutely necessary, unless someone is a threat to society. Again, child molesters, rapists, axe murderers, but generally, if society is not going to benefit from the person being locked up and there would be healing from the person being released, people should be released, right? Vengeance is a big problem. Vengeance should not be the motivation of anything within the legal system. And that's a big problem that we have here in America, right? First of all, I don't like the death penalty, right? It's not a good thing. It sickens me. There are countries in the world that I support, that I, understand as anti-imperialist countries that use the death penalty rather liberally. China, Iran, North Korea. And I'm not thrilled about that, but I understand why, right? In Iran, they have a big problem with heroin. And so in Iran, they have a policy that if you are smuggling heroin into the country, they kill you. And it works, right? People are terrified to smuggle heroin into the country, because if you get caught smuggling heroin into the country, they kill you. China, the same thing. You smuggle heroin into China, they kill you. I don't like that. I don't think that that's the best way to handle the drug issue. But you have to understand that in the developing world, in the regions of China that border Afghanistan and such, it's almost a military situation. And these drug gangs, they go to people and point a gun at their head and say, help us smuggle drugs or we'll kill you and kill your whole family. So generally, if the government wants to fight the drug gangs, they have to have the same level of threat. right? They have to be able to say, well, if you get caught working with them, we'll kill you also. It's a kill or be killed situation. It's awful. I don't think it's good, but it makes sense, right? And it works, right? People are terrified to use drugs because they don't want to get killed, right? Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, he used the death penalty around the drug issue, and it's awful. I don't condone what he did, but it makes sense, right? They have almost no drug problem in Singapore because they use the death penalty for it. It's awful, right? It's not a good thing, but it makes sense. The way we use the death penalty in America makes no fucking sense. Forgive me for you dropping an F-bomb there. It makes absolutely no sense how we use the death penalty. In America, you only get the death penalty for murder, right? There's no other crime that you can get the death penalty for at this time. It used to be you could get it for rape, and technically in the Constitution, you can get it for treason. But generally, it's only people who murder. And most murderers, even in the states that have the death penalty, don't get the death penalty, right? So you have to live in a state that still has the death penalty. And then your crime has to really make somebody, the jurors, the judge has to be really mad at you. And then you get the death penalty. But it takes you 20 years at least to finally get the death penalty. That doesn't make any sense. There is absolutely no person in the world who's going to kill somebody, and then they stop and they go, oh shit, I'm in a state that still has the death penalty. So there's kind of a 50-50 chance that maybe if I kill this guy 20 years from now, they might kill me. It's not a deterrent at all. Right? It doesn't make any sense, right? It's one thing if, you have to wipe out the drug gangs and you're saying if you sell drugs, we'll kill you within a few hours. But it's something very different. Something very, very, very different. Very different. If you're saying, okay, if you kill somebody and you're in a certain state, there's about a 50-50 chance that maybe 20 years from now we might kill you. That's not a deterrent. The reason we have the death penalty in the United States, for the most part, is for vengeance purposes. And it's mainly as a political gesture to law enforcement. It's generally, if you kill a police officer, we'll kill you. And that makes cops feel good, right? That if they kill one of us, we'll kill them. And there's been some pretty sick stuff. In Texas, at one point, they had hotels where, all the cops would rent hotel rooms and they could watch the executions on closed circuit television and shit like that. It's really unhealthy. This is not healthy behavior, right? With all due respect to law enforcement, right? The idea that we should maintain the death penalty for no other reason than it makes cops feel good, not healthy, right? We can do better than that as a country, right? It's not a healthy way of viewing things, right? Vengeance really doesn't have a place in the legal system. We shouldn't be locking people up to get revenge on them. We should be locking people up as a matter of public safety, right? If someone commits a very, very serious crime, they should be locked up to protect the public from them. Furthermore, also, the threat of locking people up, which you have to act on if you want to be serious, can deter crime from happening, so it can serve that purpose. But if we're imprisoning people, it should be done to deter crime or prevent crime. It shouldn't be done to make them pay for what they did. That's just not a healthy way of viewing things, right? Dr. Martin Luther King used to talk about an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. And that generally, if your motivation is vengeance, you're not going to end up in a good spiritual place, right? It's going to taint what you do, right? Muslims talk about haram, right? And then if something is conceived in an impure way, the result is also impure. But there's also, I'm really into Wallace Wattles, the Christian socialist, and he talks about, the way you think as a man thinks, etc. And if your motivation for doing some act is to get revenge on somebody else, to make somebody else pay, it's not going to lead to anything good for you, right? If your motivation for doing anything is to get somebody else, to punish somebody else, to make them pay, it's not going to lead to anything good. And I'm just telling you that. It's taken me years to realize that, right? I used to be a hard materialist, dialectical atheist, and I didn't think that way. But now I've come to understand the way you think about things has a lot to do with the way things turn out. And if your motivation is negative, if you're motivated by vengeance, if you're motivated by a desire to prove yourself or a desire to assert yourself over other people, bad things happen. But if your motivations are pure, the results tend to be better, right? That's why I always tell people, don't compete, create, right? Don't assume that in order to get what you want, you have to take it from somebody else, because that's going to lead to things being very, very bad. And that's why I look at the celebration of Luigi Mangione and his alleged crime as deeply unhealthy, right? Protest and demand Medicare for all because you want people to have health care, not because you want some CEO who denies people coverage to get punished and get killed. No, right? It leads to a very, very dark, bad spiritual place. Not vengeance and the desire to punish somebody else, the desire to get out your aggression. It's not going to lead anywhere good for you, right? I can moralize about it all day and tell you it's wrong, and that may not matter to you. But I'm telling you that if you want good results in life, you cannot be motivated by vengeance, right? Now, that doesn't mean you don't assert yourself. That doesn't mean that if somebody messes with you, you don't push back, right? You're right. Iran has to push back, right? Yemen has to push back, right? Palestinians defending themselves is not vengeance. Yemen blocking ships in solidarity with the Palestinians is not vengeance, right? Right? It's not vengeance to defend yourself. It's not vengeance to protect yourself, to protect your homes and communities. It's not vengeance to block an attack on someone else and put your body on the line to protect somebody else. That's not vengeance. That's very noble. That is an act of selflessness. That's an act of courage, right? So, you got to be clear about these things. There's nuance in all these things. What the Houthis have done is they erected a picket line in the Red Sea, right? Picket line means do not cross. It means do not cross. That's what a picket line is. And they said, look, we stand with the Palestinians, so no Israeli ships are going through as long as they keep killing them. When there was a ceasefire, they stopped the picket line. When Israel broke the ceasefire, they kept their picket line going, right? That's not vengeance. That's righteous solidarity, right? And that's one thing I will say, right? Right? There's a whole philosophy called nonviolence that is very popular in activist circles, right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a strong advocate of nonviolence. Mahatma Gandhi was a strong advocate of nonviolence. And many pacifists, many anti-war activists are advocates of nonviolence. When I was in Cleveland, there was the Catholic worker movement. There was the American Friends Service Committee. They were part of the Iraq War protests. One point that they would always make, nonviolence is not my philosophy. I generally think violence is abhorrent. I do believe in the right to self-defense. They technically don't believe in self-defense, but so it's not for me to say. But one point I would always hear the Quakers and the Catholic worker movement and people who'd studied Gandhi and people who'd studied Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one point that they would always make is that nonviolence is not synonymous with passivity. Nonviolence means I will not inflict violence. It means I won't strike somebody else. I won't carry a weapon against somebody else. I won't attack somebody else. It means if somebody attacks me, I'm not going to attack them back. But it does not mean that I won't put my body on the line. I won't take great risks, and I won't be confrontational. All right? And they would often say, look, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was all about nonviolence, but those lunch counters in the South that wouldn't serve black people, what did they do? They went and occupied those lunch counters, and they filled them up with black people. And the owners of the restaurant said, you must leave. This is my store. I don't serve black people here. And they sat there and they refused to leave. And they made the police come. And when the police came, they said, you're under arrest. And they sat there and they didn't get up. And they had to pull them off the chairs, and they had to drag them away. They would go limp, and they would have to drag them all the way to the... That's not passivity. It's not being violent. They didn't punch the police. They weren't violent to the store owner. But they said, we're gonna get in your way. We're gonna have a confrontation with you, and we're gonna put ourselves, we're gonna put ourselves and our own bodies on the line, and we're going to receive violence. So, and that's one thing that there are many people who use nonviolence as an excuse for being passive. You know, hey, if you're nonviolent, that's fine. That doesn't mean you can't go have a sit-in and get arrested, right? If you're nonviolent, that's fine. That doesn't mean that you can't go get arrested. If you're nonviolent, that's fine. That doesn't mean you can't put yourself in a situation where someone inflicts violence on you and you get arrested and beaten up for what you believe in, right? And that was a point I would hear the peace movement folks make many times, and that point needs to be repeated, right? And honestly, at this stage, nonviolence is far more effective than violence, right? You know, imagine that if instead of Luigi Mangione allegedly going and shooting Brian Thompson, imagine that thousands of Americans who believed in medical care for all had gone to the United Healthcare Company office and done what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did at those lunch counters. And they sat in the lobby and they said, we're not leaving because you deny this whole building, the money that built this building and the profits of this corporation come from denying people health care. So we're going to sit here and we're going to chain ourselves to the floor or whatever. And we're not getting up, and you're going to have to call the NYPD and drag us out one by one. Imagine that they did that. And thousands of people, hundreds of people, maybe even just 20, 30 people went into United Healthcare and engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience. And it was all over TV and it was all over social media that people were so angry at this corporation. They were getting themselves arrested and dragged to jail. And these people that did this, they worked together and they learned the art of protest and how to put out press releases and how to engage in protests and how to build coalitions. And people who'd never met each other, people maybe from different sides of the political spectrum, came together and did this. And other people saw it and they started doing it in their town. And all over the country, people were occupying the offices of health insurance companies and getting arrested symbolically. And getting beaten up and getting arrested, demanding that these companies stop profiting from denying people health care. And that you know, Christians and Muslims and Jews were doing it together. And that black and white people were doing it together. And Arabs and Asians were doing it together. And that people were doing it one by one. And they were thousands of people were coming together and demanding that these corporations stop their behavior, demanding Medicare for all with a very serious, dedicated mass movement, and filling up the jails and you know, going to court and saying to the judge, I am absolutely guilty of what I did, and making a speech in their, you know, in their sentencing hearing about why healthcare needs to be a human right and why we shouldn't be spending money on wars overseas when we don't provide people healthcare. That would be a movement that our government couldn't ignore. That movement would create a wave of positivity, a wave of solidarity, that our government would have to move forward on the healthcare issue. That would do far more than one young guy allegedly taking a gun and shooting somebody on the streets of Manhattan. It would do far more. And I worry that I sound like a moderate. I'm not trying to be a moderate here. I'm really not, right? I'm telling you, one thing works if people do it, and one thing does not work, right? Terrorism, left adventurism, isolated acts of violence don't work, right? You can argue about whether it's wrong or not. Maybe you don't believe in right and wrong. I'm not here to convince you that. I'm telling you it doesn't work. Nobody got health care because Brian Thompson was murdered. But a mass movement of thousands of people coming together and engaging in civil disobedience, that could actually get health care. But there you go. I mean, that's kind of what's on my mind tonight. You know, I don't see. There's been a few Rumble rants that have come in, all from one from Leo Messi and two from John McPeace. But you know, we will eventually do the roll call. Before we do that, I did just want to kind of show you all what we did, right? Because I make these videos, and I think they're very important videos that get created. These videos show what CPI is up to. So the first video shows how we went to the Iran, hands off Iran protests that happened in Chicago. and distributed Houthi books. So I'm going to show that video first. Voices from different people, some CPI, some just people we met at the rally, Iranian Americans, others. I'm going to show that. So here we go. We're here in downtown Chicago at a No War Against Iran rally. Should be interesting. We're going to talk to people, see how it goes.
We're here to stop a war with Iran, to stop World War III. We thought we dodged that bullet last year when Biden was trying to get us into World War III with Russia and Ukraine. Now it looks like Trump is doing the same thing in the Middle East, and it's just as dangerous.
I'm actually Iranian American, and the situation is escalating. I mean, Israel, of course, engaged in an unprovoked attack on Iran, complete unprovoked. They have attacked 5 countries in the region, Palestine, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, and now Iran. So it's actually really ironic because a U.S. diplomat at the UN Security Council said that, she wanted to say that it's Iran that's spreading chaos and instability and violence in the region, but she said Israel.
Israel's government has also spread chaos, terror, and suffering throughout the region. Iran's government.
So that was a Freudian slip that I think said a lot about in the unconscious of even these U.S. officials, and they know the reality. The reality is that Israel has engaged in an unprovoked war.
Now, China and Russia have both said that they are considering getting involved if the USA intervenes, and Trump's director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has said that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon and that they are not a threat.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program.
Stand for justice against genocide of the Israelis. That's the main cause, and to stop the war in Iran right now.
We need to keep our funds here at home. Money for America, not for these endless wars.
The last thing we need right now is another war, especially one in the Middle East. That's the last thing the American people want.
We need to keep our money here. We don't need to pay for medical care for them when we have none. I mean, it wouldn't even be personal. If it was just about the money, like obviously people should have their money spent on their own citizens. And as far as their atrocities they're committing, I mean, that's ridiculous.
There is one country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons. It is not Iran, it is Israel. There is.
Israel has nuclear weapons. Everybody knows it, but our government pretends that they don't. And so this could definitely lead to a nuclear war, nuclear Armageddon, because once the nukes start flying, the U.S. gets involved, Russia, China, it's crazy. We're back to where we were last fall, worrying about a nuclear war.
Going with the books. It's going pretty good, man. Yeah, we've been getting them out to almost everybody. People seem really supportive,
We don't want to hit people in this situation where there is no point of return. Everybody in the Middle East is going to be affected by the war. If the United States intervene in the war alongside Israel, I think a lot of factors going to be, happening and stuff.
Poll after poll after poll shows that the American people do not want a war, especially with Iran.
I heard some Dave Smith, the comedian, I think that's his name. He said no matter who we vote for, we always end up with John McCain. I thought that was really clever.
The nuclear issue is a distraction, and what they want to do is they want to bring regime change to Iran. They want to topple the government, and it's very dangerous. And I think there is actually a substantial American base right now, even the MAGA conservatives who oppose war with Iran. We saw Tucker Carlson do that interview, and he clowned and destroyed Ted Cruz. He's very pro-war. He doesn't even know the population of Iran.
How many people live in Iran, by the way? I don't know the population. At all? No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple? How many people live in Iran? 92 million. Okay.
Approximately 70,000 tons of bombs on this 365 kilometer of land known as the Gaza Strip. That is the equivalent of multiple nuclear bombs. Yet the world is silent on that entity. The conversation is centered around, well, what should we do with what Iran possesses in terms of enriched uranium? What should we do about the Palestinians that don't care about so-called Israeli security? We're having the wrong discussion. The discussion should be, what should we do about the countries that currently possess nuclear weapons? There is a country in the Middle East that vehemently opposes an imposed nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. It is not Iran, it is Israel. And the United States. We should not ever, as Americans, tolerate that.
The entire world is looking on in horror as Israel bombs and commits a genocide against the Palestinian people. And the only people who have really done anything material about it, although other countries say nice things, is Iran. Iran is behind the Hezbollah and the resistance in Lebanon. Iran is helping out with the Houthis. And although American media likes to pretend that they're solely responsible for Hamas, that's not entirely true. But Iran does lend its support materially in a way that no other country does.
And so I think the MAGA conservatives, the left, the liberals, everyone should get together and oppose this war. And we know at the end of the day it's the oligarchs that make the decisions.
Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free!
If the Palestinian people are to be free, then Iran needs to be strong. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that.
But even the oligarchs, I think if there is enough public pressure, they might back down. So if there's no direct U.S. involvement, I think there's a chance that it de-escalates and Israel backs off. And this would actually be great deterrence for Iran too, if Israel backs off. And this is what I'm hoping. And so please mobilize against this unnecessary war that U.S. and Israel are launching against Iran.
Palestine will live forever! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea!
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many people here in support of the Iranian people and who support the Houthis. And I guess, you know, we just ran out of books. We didn't have enough. We brought 400 to 500 and we're all out.
No justice, no what? No justice, no peace. No justice, no what? No justice, no peace. Free, free Palestine!
Yeah, so just let me roll this back. So you see these young folks dancing. What are they dancing with? Right. So wait till we get to that part. I just thought this was a cool thing. I tried to zoom in. They're waving around stuff. What are they waving around? What are they waving around? They're waving around this book, right? Because we gave it out. This is the special edition that we printed of Who Are the Houthis? What Are They Fighting For? That has the poster for our convention on it. And we brought 2 big, huge boxes to the event. We ran out. Noah and I were handing them out. People were loving it. People were loving it. And people walking by saw the rally and then they saw we were giving books out. They're like, we want one of these. So, thanks to everybody who donated to help us print this book in bulk. This is a message the American people really need to hear about the Houthis. And, you know, people were loving it. People were loving it. Random people on the streets of Chicago. It was great. Now, John is right that we had another rally the next day. We went to downtown Chicago. And, you know, we didn't have a huge group. It was just CPI people and some people that were nearby for a No War on Iran demonstration who just kind of joined. But we had a really great rally about an issue that is very important to us, which is Ibrahim Traore, the African leader. So this is the rally that we did to promote the upcoming CPI convention and also to honor this great African anti-imperialist. So, you know, different CPI members are in this video giving their opinion. This is a pretty great video. We got a huge banner that will be at our upcoming convention. We intend to bring it out in the streets more, you know, but we have a huge banner of Ibrahim Traore, and we had a great rally. So I'm going to show that video as well. So here we go.
Africa is not a mistake to be fixed. Africa is not a failed continent. Africa is the womb of the world, the cradle of civilization, the keeper of tomorrow's hope.
We know that Ibrahim Traore is the future of the African continent, that he represents the African wing of the global anti-imperialist movement.
We see that he's providing health care for his people, he's putting people first, he cares about the infrastructure, he's creating systems so that people can thrive instead of being in poverty like we have here in this country.
So we are here telling people, hands off Africa. The colonialists need to mind their business.
Why is he a dictator in the mind of the American media? Well, because he cares about the people of Burkina Faso.
Let me tell you what Ibrahim Traore is doing. He has got agricultural projects. Burkina Faso is having a farming boom right now because of this great African leader. He has just made a law that any woman who has a child, her medical bills are completely eliminated. It's free to go to the doctor and have a child in Burkina Faso, in this African country, because mothers and maternal care is so important.
You speak of democracy, yet uphold a global structure where the powerful few veto the dreams of the many. We will no longer whisper in rooms where we deserve to speak with full voice.
He's not a criminal, he's just being there for his people.
And if we could just follow his example.
The forces that are trying to overthrow Ibrahim Traore are the same forces that keep Americans poor. We want a prosperous America, not one that is so focused on maintaining the global economic system that our own citizens live in poverty.
He admires Gaddafi, he admires Patrice Lumumba, he admires all the great African leaders of the past, and we're here to say that American working people should look to Ibrahim Traore as the kind of leadership we need. A builder, a constructor, someone who lifts people out of poverty, someone who stands with the new economy rising in the world of the BRICS with Russia and China.
Donald Trump, look at this man. Try to be like him. Don't be like Zelensky. Don't be a worm. Be a president like Ibrahim Traore.
New economy emerging in the world, and it's based on real wealth. What China's doing with the Belt and Road Initiative, what Russia is doing with the Eurasian Economic Union, what is happening in Latin America with Bolivarianism, with the axis of resistance. There's a whole new economy. And this fake Wall Street derivative rip-off usury economy of Wall Street in London, that economy is the past. And the only future America is going to have is joining this new economy.
Imagine what we could have in this world just by doing what he's doing for his people.
What we need to do is get the United States to link up with this new economy in the global south and in the east, right? They lifted 1 billion people out of poverty in 20 years, right? We could be part of that. Instead, Donald Trump, on orders from Benjamin Netanyahu and the international banks, is trying to destroy that new system. No, we don't need to destroy it. We need to join it.
We are a spiritual people. Before your cathedrals, our ancestors sang to the sky. Before your missionaries, we knew the language of the rivers and the laws of the sacred forest. Christianity came, Islam came, and we received them not as slaves but as seekers. But now we ask, will the church and the mosque stand with us, truly with us, when or people are displaced by greed masked as globalization? Will your pulpits echo our cries or only repeat the songs of the powerful? Faith, too, must be decolonized. It must walk with the poor, not the privileged.
Well, we're having a really important event coming up on July 12th at the Midwest Convention Center in North Lake near the O'Hare Airport. We're going to have speakers talking about the Houthis and the Yemeni movement. We're going to have speakers talking about the Palestinians. We're going to have speakers talking about Africa and what's going on there. We're going to have speakers talking about the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We're going to have music. We're going to have traditional dancers from the former Soviet Union. It's just going to be really amazing in so many ways.
Anti-imperialist speakers, cultural performers, dancers, music. It's going to be really special. 500 like-minded people.
If you can't make it, send us a donation to cover all the costs. It certainly costs a lot to rent out this big venue and get everyone there.
To the youth of Africa, to the young boy selling oranges by the roadside, to the girl who walks 10 kilometers to attend school, to the child whose only toy is a stone but who dreams of stars. You are the reason we fight. Do not believe the lie that your continent is cursed. You are the blessing. Do not envy foreign passports. Be proud of your name, your land, your roots. The world may not applaud you now, but the future will speak your name in honor.
So we need to be paying attention to him. We need to be supporting him, and we need to be in unity around the principles that he's advocating for as a leader.
And he is standing up to AFRICOM, standing up to NATO, saying, U.S. out, we want to develop Africa for African people, not for the bankers on Wall Street who are not only keeping the people of Africa poor, but keeping people in this very city poor. Why are there so many homeless people in America? Why is our infrastructure falling apart? It's time that we hired the China Railway Company to build high-speed trains throughout the Midwest, connect Chicago to Washington, D.C. and to Los Angeles with high-speed railway. That's what we're talking about. We're saying it's time that we start having an education system that makes our kids smarter. We have social media apps that train our young people to be more confident and more physically fit. We need a government that invests in people, not a derivative rip-off government that makes profit from prison and war and death and destruction. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. And in Burkina Faso, this impoverished African country, they have such a government right now. They've got a builder, a man who believes that human beings are the source of real wealth in the world. And he is investing in his people, and they are raising up the population, raising up the life expectancy, raising up the living standards, raising up education, raising up health care, raising up access to a decent life. That's the kind of government we need here. A government of action that fights for working families. They're keeping you poor in this country as well. It's an absolute disgrace. We need leadership like Ibrahim Traore. We need programs that will allow people to raise children. We need people to have jobs and education in schools. We don't need to be starting war after war, bombing people in the Middle East, bombing people in Africa, funding terrorists in the Horn of Africa, and then banning people from coming here. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But it's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. That auditorium is going to be packed. It holds 500. We think we can fill it. It's going to be a great event. So I hope you join us July 12th.
Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore! Long live Ibrahim Traore!
It was actually really hectic trying to get the sign together.
Not taking orders from anybody.
As you can see, it's kind of jerry-rigged up. We kind of didn't have the right stuff. We had to go back and forth to Home Depot 3 or 4 times, but it took us 2 hours to set up the banner, but the reaction's been pretty nice, right?
They want you to believe there's too many people in the world. Bullshit. We need more people because human beings, human labor power is the source of all wealth. We need a government that invests in people, provides people with jobs, provides people with health care, provides people with education, and builds and constructs. Don't invest in bombs, don't invest in prisons, invest in people, human beings, and our creativity. We are the source, and we need a pro-people government. And that's what Ibrahim Traore is on the African continent. And that's why he's teaming up with China to build power plants. And that's why he's enabled thousands of Africans to become farmers and have their own orchards and have their own fields. Behind him, we have got whole fields of wealth. That's what he's about.
I do not come to declare war, I come to declare will. So we will not kneel to fear. We will not kneel to foreign banks. We will not kneel to outdated empires masquerading as friends. Africa is not asking for a seat at your table. We are building our own, a table where no child eats last. where no nation is silenced because it lacks nuclear arms, where justice is not filtered through the lens of race or history, but shared as breath is shared. This is our vision and this is our vow. Let the world hear it today and always. Africa will not kneel.
We need a government like Ibrahim Traore in America. That's what we need, a government of action that will fight for working families. So join us in Chicago, July 12th. Working families first, defeat the deep state for a new world of peace and innovation.
The most revolutionary thing to do, as Ibrahim Traore is showing us, is to build. Not destroy, but build. We need to build our way out of this global crisis. We can't bomb our way out of it, right? They're trying, but the more they try, the more trouble they get their system into. They need to join the new system that is already being built. And that's the message of our conference.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
Dare to struggle.
Dare to win.
All right. So, yeah, I think it's really important to do rallies like that because of the fact that we need to be optimistic and we need to show people not just what we're against, but what we're for. You know, you can complain all day about how bad things are, but at some point people are going to say, all right, if you're so smart, what are you for? What do you advocate? Well, we got to have an answer. And we are for a government of action that fights for working families. We have a 4-point plan to rescue the country. We have a whole perspective called innovationism that celebrates human creativity, that is a pro-human, pro-people ideology that celebrates the godlike creativity within all of us, that gives human beings the ability to reinvent their relationship with nature and reach a higher plane, that makes human beings unlike any other species. And that's the Center for Political Innovation. And we're a very, very important group that's doing a lot. And so, yeah, you know, if you come to our conference, you're going to learn all about us and you're going to hear about our perspective. And we are really what is desperately needed in America right now. We really are. There's nobody doing what we're doing. And it's very, very important. Now, I don't know why, but all of a sudden my internet has gotten fuzzy. I know I'm coming across fuzzy right now. Hopefully it fixes itself here in a second. But my audio is probably good, right? You all can hear me at least, right? I know the internet's, you know, I'm coming across very fuzzy, but you all can hear me. The audio is okay, right? Let me know if the audio's all right. But, you know, we'll probably move toward our roll call. I did want to remind you, we've got a number of Rumble rants that have come in. You know, if you've got a question for me to answer in the second half of our show, can be sent via Rumble Rant or on Cash App to Caleb Maupin 22. That's how we're receiving questions. If you've got something you want me to answer, a number of Rumble Rants have already come in. So, you know, questions can be sent in. Yeah, the audio is good, I'm hearing. So, yeah, it's mainly just that my my visual here is fuzzy, which is annoying, but hopefully the internet fixes itself. I don't know why it just went down to 1 bar. You know, the box is right over there. It should be fine, but all right, names and locations. Names and locations, folks. I will call you all out as I see you. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Philip, hi. Brooklyn in the house. Good to see you, Phil. Good to hear from you. Anybody else? Names and locations. Restless Native in St. David's, Bermuda. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Mariah in North Carolina, welcome back. Thank you. And I'm going to try to stream, you know, pretty solidly for the next little bit because I'm home. I've been working hard and traveling. But Alyssa in Virginia, welcome back. Jacob in Wisconsin, welcome back. Alex in Brazil, welcome back. Ian Chester in England. Ryan in Kansas City. Virtuous in Atlanta. I'm glad that you are virtuous. Sarah in Oregon. Shout out to Sarah. Everyone should go follow Sarah on Twitter. She does great stuff on Twitter. Shout out to you, Sarah. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Ian from the Yukon. Wow. John McCarthy in Chicago. He was in the video doing great stuff. Talking about not being a worm like Zelensky. Very good. Very, very good. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else with us tonight? Names and location. John in Maspeth. Where is Maspeth anyway? I'm not familiar with that. Does anyone want to tell me where Maspeth is? Names and locations. Names and locations. It looks like the internet fixed itself. See, we're no longer fuzzy. We're coming in normal. Names and location. Gabby in Chicago, doing hard work for our organization. You saw Gabby in the video, leading the chants, doing a great job. Gabby is a very dedicated member of our group. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and location. Oh, Maspeth is in Queens. That's not very far from here. Yeah. We had some interesting election results. I went and voted today. Not telling you how I voted, but I'm certainly surprised by who won the Democrat primary here in New York. I don't quite know what to say about it. It's a complicated situation. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Skagia. I was in Skagia. What is Skagia? I don't even know where that is. Where's that? Amway in India. Keep working hard and smart. Believe in innovation. Absolutely. Tijuana, Mexico. Viva Iran. Very good. Yes, I've been to Iran many times, and I think the Iranian people and the Islamic Revolution has had great results in terms of raising people's living standards. I am a fan of Iran. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else with us tonight? Names and locations tonight. Anybody else with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Right? Names and locations. Right? Did I miss anybody? I just call people out. Always good to call people out as I see you. Names and locations. And then I will start answering people's questions. So the way that we do it on this show, questions can be sent via Rumble Rants, or you can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. Either way, I will answer your question. This is a flagpole, by the way. This is a portable flagpole I ordered from Amazon. Are you seeing my chat? I see that. But did you send a question or something, Dan? I see that. Dan is also a very valued member of our group out in LA. It was great he keeps a great group of people out there. Dan is in touch with a lot of people and he does great stuff. It was great to be out in LA. I had like a bonus trip to LA. I went to LA to do the LA workshop, which was really awesome. Got to meet some great people out there I'd never met before, but also hang out with some of our great members. And and then I got a bonus trip to go out and cover the riots. So I got to hang out with Dan, and Dan and I, we were in some wild situations, weren't we, Dan? You, me, and Ishmael and Joseph, we were in some wild situations, but we kept our wits about us. And we're all good. So questions can be sent via Rumble Rants on Rumble, or you can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. Yeah, this is a portable flagpole that I ordered from Amazon, right? It's a flag holder. It has like a ricket on there, and I just happen to have it by my desk right now. I don't know why. So I'm fiddling with it as I talk to all of you, right? I'm fidgeting. But there we go. All right. So now, if you have any more questions, Rumble Rant or cash at me. It was crazy, but it was great to hang out. Absolutely. That video of the crazy stuff in LA, go and watch that again. That was some wild stuff. I'll tell you, I did not, I guess I came prepared because I had a helmet, but I did not know what I was getting myself into there. That rally was pretty tame. It was pretty tame and liberal and normal until the end of the day. And then it got crazy stuff, crazy stuff. But anyway, okay. So we're going to do, I don't have any super chats. So we got Rumble Rants. All right. So the first question is from John McPeace. He says, all three governments calmed down after talking to Vladimir Putin. He's the one we can thank for avoiding World War. And I think you're absolutely right. The role of Russia has been indispensable. The Iranian foreign minister went to Russia to meet with Putin. And Russia was key in this. And I said that on Press TV earlier tonight. I mean, Russia was key in de-escalating this. Not quite sure why exactly. They have a close relationship with Iran. But Trump seems to be willing to listen when they talk also, even though he's still doing this stupid war in Ukraine. And Putin's remarks, he didn't pull any punches. He said this is illegal. And look, let's just hope that this peace holds, that we don't escalate towards this close to World War III again for a long time or ever again. That would be nice. Let's hope this peace holds. Let's really just hope it holds. But yes, Russia is like on the front lines. If you look at what Russia is doing on the African continent, when I was in Russia, all right, I spoke at the Global Digital Forum. You know how many African countries there were? Francophone African countries, English-speaking African countries. So many Africans have a close relationship. Africa is the future, and Russia is heavily involved on the African continent. There's a whole new world coming, and the imperialists, the big monopolies, the bankers, they want to fight against it, right? There is a fundamental difference in worldview. Let me just throw this out there, right? For everyone who's watching this who's a Marxist, right? I've spent my years, my life in the Marxist movement. I draw heavily from Marxism. Marxism is probably the biggest political, influence on me as a movement. And, Karl Marx wrote a book, which I have here. I'm trying to pull up my copy of it. It's a book called Theories of Surplus Value. All right. It's a book that Karl Marx wrote. And I really wish Marxists would read it. I actually read it because Richard Wolff, of all people, recommended it. And I'm trying to find my copy of it. Where is my copy of Theories of Surplus Value? It's somewhere. It's not on this shelf for some reason, but it's called Theories of Surplus Value. And it was published after Marx's death. But Theories of Surplus Value was Karl Marx summing up the work of all the economists who came before him. And he starts out talking about Ricardo and the Physiocrats. And then from there, he starts talking about Adam Smith. But Karl Marx spends a huge amount of time in that book refuting the most famous economist of his day, Robert Thomas Malthus, the father of Malthusianism, the man who coined the term overpopulation. And Marx spends pages and pages and pages showing that overpopulation, as the great Peter Coffin said in his documentary, overpopulation is bullshit. There is no such thing as overpopulation, right? It's not real. Human beings are the source of wealth. Overpopulation is premised on the idea that human beings are non-productive consumers. That's the words that Marx used. That's central to the Malthusian worldview, is that human beings are non-productive consumers who eat but don't create anything. And that's just not true. Human beings are the source of wealth. It's human labor power that generates wealth. Human beings go out and make wealth. And yes, we do have an issue in our time. It's a problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit, where the more wealth that gets created by human labor power, the poorer everybody gets. And that's the irrationality of a system based on profits, right? Self-driving cars should be a great thing because less human labor power is necessary. This chore called driving is eliminated. However, under our deeply irrational system, if human beings no longer have to expend their labor power driving, it leads to everybody being poorer. That doesn't make any sense, right? And that human labor power is not a drain on society, and human beings are not non-productive consumers. And Marx spent a really long time saying that overpopulation is not real, that human labor power, along with nature, is the source of all wealth, and that if the population goes up, the amount of wealth in society goes up. And that's Marx. And the reason Marx writing on the concept of overpopulation and all of that is so important is because modern day Marxists are Malthusians. They want the birth rate to go down. They want to decrease the population. They believe in limited resources. And that is the worldview of the ultra rich. Most rich people just want to make money. And so they want the population to go up because then people can buy their products, right? They want the wealth of society to increase. However, the ultra rich, the British Empire, the big monopolies, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies, they see that there is a problem in the economy. And so they want to reduce consumption and drive down productive forces. They believe in degrowth. Well, degrowth has a name. It's called Malthusianism. It's the idea that human labor power and human productivity and overpopulation leads to an economic crisis. Marx spent his entire life arguing against Malthusianism. and arguing that there's no such thing as overpopulation, that human beings are the source of wealth. The more human beings that exist, the more wealth gets created, the more technology advances, and that the problems are inherent in the profit system, in the irrationality of the market. They're not based on human beings existing. Malthusianism is the view that the problem isn't capitalism, it's just people. And Malthusianism is the view of the World Economic Forum. Malthusianism is the view of the United Nations. It is the view of the World Bank. It is the view of the globalists, right? The big monopolies and the imperialists, George Soros and Charles Schwab and all of them, they believe that in order to save the global economy, we need to degrow. We need to reduce the population, reduce productive forces, and impoverish everybody. That's what they believe. And they're wrong. In order to save the world economy, we need a state. We need a government that controls the economy and unleashes human productive labor power. A government that invests in people. A government that controls the banks, factories, and industries and plans out the economy to make sure that we have as much growth as possible, right? We need a pro-humanity government. And the imperialists, the big monopolies, are trying to set up an anti-humanity government. Right? We need a government that invests in people, that invests in human labor power, that makes people smarter, makes people more productive, and rationally plans the economy so that growth is no longer limited, right? And the capitalist market with profits in command is leading to a great crisis because of technological breakthroughs, et cetera. So we need a planned economy. We need a government that controls the economy and represents the economy and fights for working families, controls the economy to unleash growth. And the so-called Marxist movement is led by people who don't think that, who believe that growth. First of all, Marx spent his whole career showing that capitalism can't create unlimited growth. It can't, because of the problem of overproduction. Because the more wealth you create, the more you have an economic crisis. The market becomes glutted with products that cannot be sold. The wages paid out in the process of production are never enough to buy back what is produced. Marx spent his whole career showing why things like the Great Depression happened, why you have a boom-bust cycle. Your modern leftists, they think growth is bad, and they think capitalism can create endless growth. They just think growth is bad, and they don't want growth. And they think wealth itself is bad, and they accept a Malthusian idea that there's too much stuff in the world, there's too much production, there's too much population, there's too many people, and so they want to use the state to forcibly degrow. That is fundamentally opposite of what Marx preached. And the anti-imperialist countries, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, China, they all had revolutions because the imperialists were keeping them from growing. China used to be the sick man of Asia. They broke free and they started building and constructing, and they became the second largest economy in the world. Russia, the Soviet Union, they broke out of imperialism and they became a superpower with 5-year plans and industrialization, built the world's biggest steel mills, the world's biggest power plants. Ibrahim Traore in Africa is having a farming boom. You know, I mean, it's all these countries that break out of imperialism. They do it to grow. And in order to be strong enough to break out of imperialism, they have to have a government, a popular government that serves the people, right? And the struggle against capitalism and imperialism and the struggle to fight for working families is a struggle to have economic growth and to break the power of the big monopolies that are trying to impose degrowth on the world. And that understanding is completely lost. Marxists no longer think that. Marxists are anti-growth. Instead of, Marx says in Critique of the Goethe Program, he says the only way we can have full communism, the highest stage of communism, is to have so much wealth that people don't have to work, that labor becomes life's prime want, no longer a necessity, that, so much wealth exists, the springs of cooperative wealth flow more abundantly. He says only then can we say each according to his own ability, each according to his needs. Marx's vision is a society where with rational planning of the means of production and centralization of the means of production, we can create so much wealth that we have total freedom and there's no coercion, right? So Marx is not anti-wealth. And he's definitely not anti-growth. The woke people and the prevailing voices that speak in the name of Marxism, they've never read Marx's economics. They don't care about economics. They're doing some philosophy, postmodern thing. they're rebelling against whiteness or whatever. They're not interested in what Marx actually wrote. But Marx spent his whole career showing that the problem with capitalism is that it prevents growth, and that if we have a rationally planned economy, we can create so much growth, we can eventually have a world where there's so much abundance, there's really no inequality, and there's no need for a state. Marxism is pro-growth. Imperialism is degrowth. What the imperialists do is they hold back development and they keep countries impoverished. This understanding, this used to be standard, right? This is what the Communist Party taught during the 1930s. This is what, communist organizations around the world believe. And, in China, the Communist Party has 5-year plans and brags about all the growth it's overseen. This is all pretty basic, but this is lost, right? And people who talk about Marxism in the United States are largely Malthusians, even though Marx wrote a whole book against Malthusianism. And they largely are against growth and think growth is bad. Okay. And our worldview as innovationists, we hold on to the essence of Marxist economics, which is belief in growth and a celebration of human creative power, and a belief that with a rationally planned economy, we can unleash human innovation and human creative power to create a world of vast abundance. That's what we believe. And that is, that's not original. We didn't invent that. Marx invented that. And it's a brilliant understanding that Marx had, but it's absent from Marxist circles. And that's the innovationist worldview. And that's what we believe. And we're going to fight for that view, because most people that go around talking about communism, they are wrapped up in revenge fantasies. They think wealth is bad. They want to punish the rich people. They want to unleash, blood and terror. And they also tend to actually hate all the actual anti-imperialist and Marxist governments because they're not communist enough, or they aren't LGBT enough, or whatever. We're doing something different, even though we're holding on to the essence of what Marx said about economics. We are doing something different than what the Marxist movement is doing at this point, at least in the West. The Marxist movement in the West is not a Marxist movement. It's a Malthusian movement. It's a movement of unleashing kind of the rage and impulses of people in order to serve the ultra rich and their Malthusian agenda. And we're doing something different. Now that said, when it comes to the philosophy of Marx believed in dialectical materialism. He was a hard atheist, said there's no spirituality whatsoever, only material, and the material is defined by conflict. I don't agree with that worldview. I think Marx's philosophical worldview is wrong, and largely the communist governments don't. Now, I think in China they still do, but in Venezuela, where it's a Marxist government, they are Christians, right? It's Christianity is in the Constitution. Maduro is Catholic. Hugo Chavez is Catholic. Nicaragua, the slogan is Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. In Russia, the leader of the Communist Party, Gennady Zyuganov, is an Orthodox Christian. And largely, communist governments don't believe in the materialist and dialectical philosophy. Some do, but largely that view has been, moved away from. Whereas Western communists don't believe in Marxist economics. They don't believe in growth. They think growth is bad. And they hold on to the aesthetic or the philosophy of Marxism, which is atheism and rejection of spirituality, hostility toward religion, and a belief that conflict and violence is the solution to everything. So it's kind of like, what do you take from Marxism? I take the economics and the problems of capitalism that Marx pointed to, and his understanding of historical epochs and the nature of humanity reinventing our economic system in relationship with nature. I take from Lenin his understanding of imperialism and capitalism moving to the imperialistic stage, and the importance of people struggling to break out of imperialism, etc. And I think we can look to the various communist governments that have done that. And like Russia and China both turned themselves into major superpowers with centrally planned economies that electrified and raised people up out of poverty. So we can take a lot from Marxism. We take the good from Marxism. The woke people don't take any of that, right? They are pro-imperialism, right? They hate all the anti-imperialist governments. They think the Western countries are the most advanced because we have the most LGBT rights, etc. here, and they certainly don't believe in growth. They think growth is bad. So they reject anti-imperialism. They reject the economic understanding of Marxism, but they embrace the dialectical materialist worldview. They're very hostile towards religion, and they believe in conflict and struggle as the answer to everything. So we take the good from Marxism and we reject the bad. They reject the good. They want nothing to do with the communist governments. They want nothing. They're not anti-imperialist. They're not pro-growth. They don't understand economics. And they just take the bad. They love conflict and violence, and they love, being hostile to religion and rejecting spirituality. So, take your pick. We take the good from Marxism, leave the bad. They take the bad from Marxism, and they keep the good. Jordan Peterson, right? You listen to him. He rants against the postmodern neo-Marxists. Well, you can't be a postmodernist and a Marxist, because postmodernism says that there is no grand narrative of humanity. Marxism, on the other hand, is a grand narrative of humanity. Marxism, with historical materialism, says hunter-gatherer civilization, slavery, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, and eventually communism. That's a grand narrative of humanity. Marxism is not postmodern. Postmodernism says there are no grand narratives. Marxism is a grand narrative. So why does Jordan Peterson say postmodern neo-Marxists? Why does he say that? Because woke people are not Marxists. They're postmodern. They just take from Marx his critique of the West, right? Marx talked about how capitalism came into the world dripping with blood, about how slavery and the slaughter of the indigenous people was the rosy dawn of capitalism. That's the word that he used. If you read Capital, chapter 8, he talks about how, the West, as we know it, the modern world, came into existence with mass theft and murder. Woke people love to talk about that, right? And they're right. I mean, they're not wrong. They're 100% correct. Capitalism began with mass theft. They love to talk, about how a lot of the, we're told that capitalism is just human nature. Woke people love to show that humans act differently in different circumstances, and hunter-gatherer tribes, they didn't have the institution of marriage. They had different genders. They love to talk about that stuff. Marx talked about that stuff too, because he was making a point about history changing. So they take from Marxism the kind of deconstruction of the narratives of our society, but they are postmodernists. They don't accept a Marxist worldview. They just use Marxism as a vehicle for deconstruction. Postmodernism believes that deconstruction is the highest good, that you never should build, you should only take things apart. That's what Derrida and that's what the postmodernist thinkers generally believe, that if you're constructing, that's totalitarianism, that's fascism, that's authoritarianism, and that the only good thing for one to do is to deconstruct, right? To take things apart. That's what the postmodernists believe. And that is a fundamentally toxic worldview. But you can see how there's a Marxist element to that, right? Marx thought all change comes through struggle. Well, that's what they say too, right? Taking things apart, that's the postmodern perspective. So when Jordan Peterson talks about postmodern neo-Marxists, well, they're not Marxists, because Marx was not a postmodernist, but they're postmodernists who use elements of the Marxist worldview, to aid their kind of Malthusian woke agenda and to engage in cultural deconstruction, societal deconstruction, to drive us more toward individualism and alienation, etc. And so, this may sound like obscure philosophical stuff, but it's having a very big impact. Look, you look at the mental health crisis. A lot of people are really lonely. They really want to be part of a community. They really want to believe in something. What is that? It's postmodernism. We're taking everything apart. We're atomizing people down into isolated individuals. Right. That's, and woke people, right? If you ask people about the left, what do leftist people think about minorities? Well, you ask people, what do communists, socialists think about minorities? You'll get, well, they're really into minorities, right? They're all about minorities. Well, what does the Communist Manifesto say? Marx said all previous political movements have been on behalf of minorities. We fight for the immense majority, and that the only reason Marxists fight for oppressed groups is because they believe it will lead to the liberation of the immense majority. Racism hurts all people, right? Most especially those who suffer from it, but also it hurts the solidarity of the working class. And that part of building working class solidarity is opposing racism, that imperialism and colonialism oppresses all workers. Karl Marx, when he was living in London, he saw that the way the British capitalist system kept itself intact was by oppressing Ireland, and that the landed aristocracy of England was using the oppression of Ireland to secure their wealth. And so Marx said that they should call for the British workers, and the British workers should focus on supporting Ireland in its freedom struggle, not as a matter of abstract justice, but rather as a question of their own liberation. It wasn't just that it was a matter of right and wrong. It was that in order to resist the landed aristocracy and the English capitalists, they should want the Irish workers to be victorious, right? And that supporting a minority is about fighting for the liberation of the majority, right? Well, again, postmodern people don't think that. Postmodern people hate the majority. They think the majority are bad, they're the mob, they're evil, and they're always looking for a minority that they can use to show how bad the majority is. And woke people, they want to distinguish themselves from the majority. They want to show how individual they are. They get pink hair and body piercings. They want to be so different. They want to be so different because they want everyone to know they're not one of the sheeple. They're not one of those ordinary people who just goes along with it. They're woke, right? It's a completely different perspective. And postmodernism, right? This may sound like an obscure academic debate, but it's actually very relevant in your life. If you hate the majority of humanity, you're not going to be a revolutionary. You're going to be a, what do you call it? There's a term for somebody who, you're going to be a misanthrope, right? So there you go. Anyway, I could ramble about this all night, but it's actually very important. The struggle against postmodernism, the struggle against wokeness in defense of human creativity and individualism, in defense of collective interests of society and community. This is a really important thing. And this is why the innovationist worldview is so important. Neither the left nor the right gets it, but the anti-imperialist countries do. That's why I like visiting them. Anyway, I could ramble about that some more, but anyway, we got more things to get to. Now, Leo Messi asks a very interesting question. Link between Coughlin, Grits, and Jake Shields Fuentes. 3 generations of anti-war conservative types. Well, I don't know who Grits is. I know Father Coughlin, all right? And I know who Nick Fuentes is. I'm not a fan. Okay, so Father Coughlin was a Catholic priest in Michigan. And he was a Catholic priest in Michigan who liked Hitler and didn't like Jews. And during the Depression, he mobilized Catholics to oppose the Communist Party. And his broadcasts were paid for by General Motors. And he built kind of a mass movement against labor unions. He was based in Michigan. And in Michigan, you had the Flint sit-down strike and the rise of the United Auto Workers, which was a communist-led labor union. And Father Coughlin was this Catholic priest who was really against communists because they were atheists. And he therefore opposed the United Auto Workers Union. And he got on the radio and he preached against labor unions because he said they were communist. And Father Coughlin was interesting because unlike right-wingers in our time, Father Coughlin condemned capitalism also. He was a Catholic, and because the Catholic Church was against capitalism, he had at that time in America, right? Nowadays, I mean, I don't go to Catholic church, but there was a kind of Irish accent that priests had during the 1930s and even up into the 50s, a kind of, it's not really how people in Ireland sound, but it's, it was like, and Father Coughlin spoke like this, and he had his broadcasts, and he spoke in this way, and he would begin, you listen to Father Coughlin, you can find him if you go to archive.org, you can listen to his sermons. He starts out condemning capitalism. Capitalism is oppressing people, and people don't care about their, he condemns the inhumanity of capitalism. And then from there, he starts ranting against the communists who are atheists, who, have a totalitarian regime in the Soviet Union, who are leading violent protests and organizing strikes and all of this. And then he starts yelling about the communists and the communists are satanic and we need God and we need to kill the commies. That's basically Father Coughlin. Now, why is Father Coughlin considered anti-war? He's considered anti-war. He was against World War II because he supported Hitler. I mean, he thought Hitler was great, and he thought, that there was he thought communism was a Jewish conspiracy. He thought Hitler was great because he was killing the communists. Father Coughlin was a despicable figure in my view. Now, I think his rhetorical style is interesting, right? In that, he did condemn capitalism, which conservatives in our time don't generally do. And that he was illiberal. I mean, he was a fascist, basically. He was a Catholic fascist. And the Pope eventually removed him from the airwaves. But he was a really important figure in fascism in the 1930s. He was one of the main, propagandists for the America First Committee, which was trying to get the USA to not go into World War II. And he was part of the American Liberty League that thought Roosevelt was a communist. And it was people who, Democrats largely from the urban political machines, Catholic Democrats led by Al Smith, who quit the Democrat Party because they thought Roosevelt was a communist. And that's Father Coughlin. And I don't know what more to say about him. He was just, calling him anti-war is a bit generous, right? He was a Nazi. I don't know what more to say about it. He did, I don't know what more to say. That's Father Coughlin. Now, I've never heard of Bo Gritz, but John McPeace says he was a Willis Carto guy. Well, Willis Carto was a guy who was, he had what was called the Liberty Lobby. And he was somebody who was like, kind of like a John Birch Society kind of guy, but he was anti-war. The John Birch Society, in the 70s, they became very pro-Zionist and very, very, very pro-war, basically. They were an anti-establishment right-wing group from the 60s that believed that the USA was kind of taken over by some kind of communist conspiracy. They thought Dwight Eisenhower was a communist, and they became like objects of ridicule in mainstream media. U.S. society was pivoting in a Cold War liberalism direction. Kennedy, Eisenhower was elected as a Republican, but he was against McCarthyism. And then you had Kennedy, JFK, and then you had LBJ, Lyndon Johnson. And U.S. society was pivoting in a liberal direction because they wanted to negotiate with the Soviet Union, et cetera. And so the John Birch Society is these kind of conservatives who thought Dwight Eisenhower was a communist, et cetera. They became kind of the objects of ridicule, and they did take some positions that put them at odds with the U.S. establishment. Now, the John Birch Society, as the anti-Vietnam War movement got going, what's weird is the John Birch Society actually opposed the Vietnam War. They believed it was a communist conspiracy. They thought the Vietnam War was being arranged by the communists to convince people that the communists were right, to convince, to make people afraid of war, to like make the case for the communists or whatever. But then they thought the anti-Vietnam War movement was communist. And so they just basically dedicated themselves to going around beating up communists. And in the late 60s, they banned, they supported Israel, and they banned any criticism of Israel from their organization. And the John Birch Society just kind of became, they still held on to their belief they were communists under every rock, but they set up like a nonprofit called Western Goals, which trained people to go into communist groups as FBI informants. And that was the John Birch Society. But out of the John Birch Society milieu, you had a layer of people that didn't support Israel, that didn't go that direction. And you had a guy named Willis Carto. And Willis Carto, I think he was from like Idaho or Utah or somewhere out west. And he had a magazine, like, was it the Spotlight, the National Spotlight? And he was a John Birch Society kind of far-right guy who was anti-Israel and anti-war. Based on his far right views, Willis Carto, I don't know what more to say. I mean, he was a far right guy in the 60s, 70s, and 80s who was anti-war. I think a lot of what came later with like the militia movement, right? In the 90s, you could say was inspired by Willis Carto, but he was anti-Zionist, which most of the right wing was not, right? Especially 70s and 80s, the conservatives, the neocons came in, and the Republican Party was pro-war, pro-cracking down on civil liberties, and pro-Israel, and Willis Carto was not. And he entered alliances with various people. At one point, Lyndon LaRouche was kind of aligned with Willis Carto, but I don't think that ended well. And I think if I remember correctly, I think Lyndon LaRouche feels that Willis Carto betrayed him and put him in prison, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think part of the way Lyndon LaRouche was railroaded to federal prison involved like Willis Carto narking on him with the FBI or something like that. John would know that history better than me, but I think that the relationship between Willis Carto and LaRouche was not consistent. And then Nick Fuentes. Look, I'll just say this about Nick Fuentes. I'm a little safer, right? But I can talk about. I have no respect for Nick Fuentes whatsoever. I really don't, right? I think that there are people, who are anti-Israel and anti-war and have similar ideas to Nick Fuentes about the Israel lobby and stuff that are respectable people. I respect Candace Owens, for example. But Nick Fuentes, first of all, the way he talks is repugnant, right? He's a shock jock. He goes around using ethnic and racial slurs, fighting with people. At one point, he was going after Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he called her Large Marge and was calling her fat, right? And he likes to insult people. He's like an insult comedian. And he uses the word gay as an insult. That's one of his things, which was kind of a thing people did when I was in high school, but it's not a nice thing to do. I mean, people use it kind of, I don't know. People use it ironically now, but it's not a nice thing to do. You shouldn't use the word gay as if it's an insult, right? I mean, LGBT people exist, and it doesn't mean using gay as if it's a synonym for stupid or unpleasant or cringe. That's not a nice thing to do. And he does that. And, and he fights with people, and he sends his internet squads after people for crazy reasons and doxes people and all that. He's just not a good dude, right? He's anti-Israel, but he's not building any real organization. And he tends to target people that have similar views to his that are actually doing organizing. Now, if this doesn't ring any bells, if you're someone who's in our spaces, not naming any names, but that's just like certain people in our spaces, right? Who, they don't really have a real organization, but they are insult comedians and then they target people who are actually doing real organizing. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a really, really important figure. Yeah, I mean, she's the most anti-war voice in Congress. And apparently when Nick Fuentes went after her, he targeted her because of something involving her divorce. That sounds like a personal matter that's not my business or yours. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been divorced, and, you don't know what happened, right? Divorces are very complicated. But I guess he dug up some dirt about her divorce and was trying to say that she was adulterous or something. Who cares? Not my business, right? And then he started calling her fat. Right. And was calling her Large Marge. Why? How is that helpful? Right. And that's the kind of stupid shock jock crap that tears apart our movement. Right. Angela McCurdle, important leader of the Libertarian Party. But one thing she has to go up against is a bunch of libertarians who never do anything but have big YouTube channels, engage in this kind of, insult comedy and ridicule culture and targeting people who think the same thing as them. That's what Nick Fuentes is for right-wing anti-establishment, anti-Israel voices, right? He's big and famous on the internet, and he insults people, and he targets people, and he doxes people, and people who come around him who have very similar views. He sicks his army of bots to go after them. These kind of people are a cancer. Right? There's nothing wrong with streaming. I'm streaming right now. Nothing wrong with being on social media. But there's a certain type of influencer who doesn't have any aspiration to build a real group, who's just looking to create drama and is basically a bully. They have a bot army who targets people, and they are a cancer, right? They are a cancer. And I believe the government inflates these people. It blows them up in order to, as a counterinsurgency strategy, to prevent a real, they don't want a real far-right movement that's anti-Israel to emerge. So they boost Nick Fuentes. So everyone who gets interested in those ideas finds Nick Fuentes, and Nick Fuentes trains them to be assholes and to insult people's appearance and target people around their personal lives. And on top of that, Nick Fuentes then gets them to think anyone who's building a real mass movement is gay and cringe, and that's why Nick Fuentes is blown up. And a lot of these people that are these these shock jock types, they get blown up, and people who do real organizing are not. Right. And it's look, if you're going to build a real organization, right, if you really wanted to stop the Iran war, right, you really wanted to stop the USA from attacking Iran, why in the world would you care about Marjorie Taylor Greene's marriage? Right? I could care less about what went on in Marjorie Taylor Greene's marriage. None of my goddamn business. Right? I also could, I mean, she works out, she's physically fit, but I could care less about her body and her body image. So why in the world you have the most anti-war person on the Republican side, and and Nick Fuentes does this, and he has this kind of like shock jock, she's gay. Yeah. And he sits there and he calls people gay and fat. And I hate this, right? And it's not building a real movement. It's not productive. I really have no respect for Nick Fuentes. I believe that whether he knows it or not, he's been inflated as a way to prevent people who think like him from getting really involved. And there are people just like that in the communist spaces. And you know who I'm talking about. And it's the same thing. Everyone who gets close to them, everyone who's doing real organizing gets close to them, suddenly gets smeared. They send their bot armies after them, usually about things related to their personal lives, or childish insults and stuff. You know exactly who I'm talking about. And they're the same thing. And I believe they've been inflated by the government as well. That would be the only thing to explain their behavior. And so Father Coughlin, the radio priest, Willis Carto, kind of a right-wing dude, right-wing dude who was anti-Israel and anti-war, and Nick Fuentes, an asshole on the internet who's not helpful at all, really not helpful at all, and I believe is kind of a deprogramming operation for people on the far right. And this is a pattern. You watch out for those streamers. Watch out for the streamers. I'm here streaming as I tell you to watch out for streamers. But I'm being honest here. I'm just telling you there's a layer of people who have no aspiration to build a real group. Look, I mean, in response to this whole Iran thing, there's a layer of people that just love to condemn, right? It's like, oh, I told you so. Trump is awful. Yeah, it's pretty awful what Trump did with Iran. I'm not going to disagree with you about that. Oh, I condemn. How does you condemning helping anything? Great. So you condemn, and what changes? Well, you don't have to change anything. You just get on the internet and give voice to people's outrage. So there you go. All right. I hope that was helpful, Leo Messi. Maybe you didn't like that answer, but I've studied Father Coughlin. I think he's interesting, but I mean, he's a fascist. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was anti-war because he liked Hitler and he hated Jews. And, I don't know what more to say about it. The only thing that's interesting about Father Coughlin, I will say, is that, it was the Great Depression, and it was common for far right people to condemn capitalism in that time. It's not anymore, but that will probably come back into fashion as the economic crisis gets worse. But in the 1930s, all the far right people were for some kind of anti-capitalism. They were just not. They were against Marxists. They were against Marxism. They thought the Marxists were bad, but they were for some, whether it was Catholic distributism or National Socialism or Italian fascism, they were for something other than capitalism. All right. The pro-Israel side of MAGA is always accusing America Firsters of being funded by Qatar, but Donald Trump just used Qatar to broker his ceasefire. That's wild. So Qatar and Turkey are the main funders of the Muslim Brotherhood. They're not the Saudis, but they're not Shia like Iran either. They're, the westernized Muslims. Qatari money plays a negative role in leftist circles, Noam Chomsky and Amy Goodman, and, the leftists who kind of align with the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatari money has a lot to do with that. When Noam Chomsky came to the UN, I remember I asked him a question, and he basically dodged the question because he was there as a guest of the Arab League, and he couldn't do a favor for Iran with the Arab countries, having been his hosts. And that, Qatari money does play a negative role. But look, this whole hysteria about foreign money. First of all, nobody's got more money influencing American politics than Israel does. Oh my goodness, right? Israel is so wrapped up in our politics. But the reality is, we live in imperialism. The U.S. imperialists, Wall Street, is the center of the world economy. I've got news for you. Every country in the world has their money in American politics because the United States considers itself the policeman of the world, and because U.S. corporations are in every country. Okay? Right? So, I mean, when they start a hysteria about Chinese money, Russian money, Iranian money, Cuban money. It's like every country in the world has its money wrapped up in our politics. Saudi Arabia used to be a partial owner of Fox News, right? You know, Fox News ain't going to tell you that. That's not going to go over good with their viewers. I don't think they are anymore. I think they sold their share. But foreign money is all over American politics, all over American business. You know, Chase Bank, HSBC Bank, they're doing business all over the world. And when politicians start this, oh, foreign money, it's like, just roll your eyes. This is dumb crap, right? If they were really, I mean, there's no, foreign money is all over American politics. And you know what? The only thing worse than foreign money is domestic money. The ultra rich billionaires who run our politics, their money is even worse in corrupting American politics. So whenever anyone starts telling you, oh, money from this country is corrupting our politics, unless they're talking about Israel, which, you know, there's something to be said for that. It's just kind of like roll your eyes, because every country in the world is invested in this country. Every country in the world is trying to get the best outcome for their own economic interests in politics. All the American companies are invested, and you better believe American money is in all over the politics of the whole world, right? The USA is financing political parties all over the world, whether it's with USAID or US corporations supporting one candidate over another. All right. This whole thing about foreign money in American politics, this is McCarthyism. And you'll notice it only gets used against anti-imperialist states, right? Only gets used against Russia, against China, against Iran. There's no outrage about Brazilian money in American politics. There's no outrage about, you know. So Qatar is a country that is anti-Israel but pro-US, right? You know, it's anti-Israel. It funds the Muslim Brotherhood, but it tends to be anti-Iran. And, you know, is it possible that they've boosted anti-Israel voices in the MAGA camp? Sure. And it's also very possible that Israel has boosted, you know, anti-Iran voices in the MAGA camp. And it's very possible that all kinds of different countries have boosted all kinds of different people. I am starting to become an adherent of the dead internet theory. I think the internet is full of fake bots and fake trolls and fake accounts, and all kinds of people for all kinds of different reasons are boosting all kinds of different things. And within this mess, we just have to do what we think is right. That's what I think. And I think that, yeah, you know, as long as the United States is intimately involved in the entire world is going to be intimately interested and involved in the United States. And, you know, just when someone starts giving you that, oh, this country's, you know, just, you know, there's so many countries that are deeply involved in American politics. But Caleb, no foreign country should influence our country. Well, that ship has sailed, my friend. That ship has sailed, right? Israel is a foreign country. It's heavily influencing our politics. Saudi Arabia is a foreign country. It's heavily influencing our politics. Mexico is a foreign country. It's heavily influencing our politics. I mean, you know, there are so many countries that are heavily influencing American politics, and America is heavily influencing the politics of every country in the world because we are a superpower. So yeah, just, you know, just forget that whole thing. That's my opinion about that. And I think those are all the Rumble rants that I have received. All right. And I don't see any Cash Apps. So, yeah, I mean, Andrew Cuomo, certainly, I'm not disappointed to see Andrew Cuomo lose. I'm not a fan of that dude. But I did want to remind you all how important this event is. It's going to be really, really awesome. I hope you'll be there. You know, if you can, if you all have any more Rumble rants or Cash App questions, I will answer them. But I'm going to put on the video I did to promote the July conference, you know, to just explain why we need funds, we need you there, etc. If you have any more questions, send them in. If not, I'll sign off after this. You can send questions on Rumble via Rumble Rants, or you can send questions to Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. So yeah, if you got any questions, send them in while I show this video. Friends, how you doing today? I'm letting you know, the Center for Political Innovation, we are about to do on July 12th, the biggest event that we have ever done. It will be our national gathering in Chicago on July 12th. and it's going to be really, really special. We are talking with a number of important anti-imperialist voices, a lot of different communities. There's going to be musical performances, dance performances, there's going to be great speeches, and it's going to be a whole day gathering dedicated to anti-imperialism. I am committed, and CPI has always been committed to building an in real life network of people. And we carry out real operations. We were at the inauguration of Trump with our Trump and Kim banner saying only peace can make America great again. We were on the streets of Chicago at the Democratic National Convention with a book exposing what Kamala Harris and who she really is and what she's really about, and it was really, really important. We have 1,000 copies of our book about the Houthis that are being distributed with the poster of the convention on the back to people who would never go looking for this. We are putting door hanger flyers on doors of people, again, that would never go looking for this. We're not performing and trying to make ourselves feel good. We're actually trying to build a network of people that can be anti-imperialists in America. And it's not easy to do. It's very difficult in these times to build a real in-life organization. People have their issues. We live in a very strange time, but we have to do it. And we are committed to continuing this project. This video is basically me telling you we need your support. In order to pull off our convention that includes our 7-day program for our members around the country to come to Chicago, includes our huge convention on July 12th, where we're gonna fill up the Midwest Convention Center, in order to have an effective national planning meeting and gathering in Chicago the day after on July 13th. In order to do what we need to do, we need to fill up that auditorium and we need money. And there's really no way around that. We need you to donate to the Center for Political Innovation. We have set up a GoFundMe, and a lot of people have already contributed. We already raised a couple $1,000, but it's not enough. In order to really pull off our July activities and really have a win for anti-imperialism, we need your support. We need you to go to the GoFundMe right now and donate $5 or $20. We need you to go to the donate button on the CPI website and send us $100 or $50, whatever you can do. If we're gonna do what we need to do in July and build the organization and have the mega anti-imperialist rally that needs to happen on July 12th and solidify the network that we're building to continue to carry out the great operations that we do, we need you to help us out. Every cent that we raise goes into building this group. I'm lucky I have a paycheck with everything that's going on. I'm surviving, and I have consistently put a huge amount of the money that I have, my own resources, my own funds, into CPI because I believe in it, because it needs to happen, because this organization is necessary. I'm looking at what I've got and my own resources and my own bills and all of that, and I'm looking at what's already been paid for, and it's not enough. I mean, it's just not enough. I can't just pay for everything myself. We have membership dues and other things, but we need a special gift. We need a special gift to make July happen. We need you to give us a special contribution so that we can make sure the July events go smoothly, that the housing for the people coming in out of town is covered, that the speakers that are being flown in, their airfare is properly covered. We need you to make a special one-time gift to make this July gathering, this anti-imperialist summit that we are organizing. We need you to help us make it happen and help us make it a success. Small gift, big gift, whatever you can do. We need you to help us with it. But you know what? I'll just say this. If it's a matter of send us a gift or come, we'd rather you come. We'd rather you be there. It's much more important that you be there on July 12th. If you can't afford to give us a gift, but you can afford to come to town, if there's one event that you come to this year, make it July 12th. CPI, Center for Political Innovation, we're doing something that nobody else is doing, and we're doing it right. We're not doing it in a way that we're trying to win the internet. We're not doing it in a way that we're trying to make ourselves feel special or act like we're cool. We're building what needs to be built. We are building the real connections. And if you can understand why what we're doing is so important, if you can understand why anti-imperialism is the future, but we have to break out of the narrow niche circles and internet culture and get to the masses of people with real outreach, If you can understand that, please give us a gift. We're trying to build an actual movement to win new people to anti-imperialism and continue to carry out operations to change the conversation in America so that we have a country where there's a mass movement demanding justice for working families and an end to these wars, that we're saying no to World War III, we're saying no to the emerging low-wage police state. That's what we urgently need. So if you can help us in any way, send us a gift. If you can be there on July 12th, be there. This is the biggest endeavor CPI has ever done, and it's going to lead to even bigger things. We don't back down. We don't go away. If we were going to back down, we would have done it a long time ago. And if we were one of their plants or one of these fake anti-imperialists, they would be making it a lot easier for us. We have been facing a lot of challenges, but we continue to achieve great victories. So we need your support. Please send us a contribution. Please be there on July 12th at the Midwest Convention Center in the Chicago area. It's right near the O'Hare Airport. It's going to be awesome. We need you there. Thank you. Yep. So please send us a contribution if you can. If you can't make it, send us a gift. You can, do so on the GoFundMe. But my focus today, I made a whole list this morning, and I actually crossed off everything on the list. I did what I needed to do, booked the hotel rooms for our guests, made some calls, arranged that. The banner that's going to go at the front of the room got ordered. I'm very happy about that. A lot is happening for the convention. So it's going to be the biggest thing we've ever done. And I hope you'll be there. If you can't make it, send us a gift, and there'll be video afterwards. So I hope to see you all in Chicago. And I guess on that note, since no one seems to have any more questions, I will put on the closing music, and we'll be back. Thanks, everybody. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.